and welcome to the Album of the Year podcast. My name is Marty. To my left is Kris. Kris, how are you this fine Sunday morning?
Hey, man, doing fantastic. Awesome. Sunday morning. Whose idea was that? I think it was my idea.
Yeah, I think
really,
so too.
I can't complain about it. Yeah. I noticed that the first episode we had some beer. The second episode we had Zimas. Mm-hmm. Today we have coffee. Just trying to stay awake, man. Yeah. But I think it's not going to be a problem. I'm feeling good.
I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, I was out a little late last night. For those of you that don't know, my birthday was on Friday.
Yeah, this is that. Apparently, there's a weird 2-week period or so where you and I are the same age.
Yeah.
So right now we're both 39.
Yeah, and then you're going to be 40 in a couple of weeks, and then we have to share this moment in the sun together, Kris.
For this 2 weeks, you're my peer, but once I turn 40, then I'm a year older than you.
Screw you.
It's back down.
That's you're back. You're like it's like the Olympic medal.
Yeah, exactly.
Pedestal, and
that's exactly
you're
how
in the top middle one, and I'm like the bronze medal winner. Mm-hmm.
I have dreams about that. In fact, that's exactly how it is.
You're the U.S. and I'm like Finland or something. So, awesome. Man, it was my birthday on Friday. I went and saw my good buddy Graham's album release show. His band Western Youth. Really great, alt country roots rock band. They just put out a really great album, and they had an album release show here in Austin at Spider House Ballroom. It was really great. If you haven't checked them out, you should. They're really, really good. Their album is on iTunes, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere I believe that you can stream music. You can listen to it. It's a very, very good album. And they were really good, and it was a great show. The event had a mezcal sponsor, so I drank more mezcal than I probably should have. So, and we were doing
the coffee today. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And we were doing shots of mezcal, which is really strange because based on my previous experience with that particular spirit, I've always just had mezcal cocktails. There's this one bar called Whistler's here in Austin that does a mezcal old fashioned that's very, very good and that kind of thing. And it's that's kind of my stilo now. That's what I do. Shots of mezcal is just, I couldn't believe I was doing it. It was just kind of, but I did it, and here I am, a new man, reborn at 39. So
that's amazing. You finally seen the light.
Seen the light of mezcal shots. Ooh.
That's awesome. Man.
They had a special that was $7 for, you got a Lone Star tall boy, and you got a shot of mezcal. And I forgot what they called it, but they had some weird name for it. And the Lone Star can was a camo can, Kris.
Oh, no, not the camo cans.
Busch Light in the camo can.
Oh, man, that's an old inside joke. Go back.
It is, yeah.
There's camo cans, man.
Essentially,
what better way to usher in the last year of your 30s than camo cans and mezcal, man?
I drank a Lone Star. And it was funny because last episode I was talking about being out of town. In Michigan, actually, the first episode. And I actually went out of town again. We went to Columbus, Ohio, and Courtney's good friend Dennis got married. And their wedding was at a summer camp in rural Ohio, which was really interesting. But they had tons and tons and tons of really, really good craft beer.
That's awesome. I love that we always start these episodes with what's going on. And it's Marty gets to talk for a little bit about some cool thing he's doing. What have I been doing? It's the same thing, man. Changing
those diapers,
yeah,
bro.
It's been a busy time at work, so it's just been work, come home, hold the baby, change diapers, do that thing and everything, So,
yeah.
So I'm a little bit like even this. I wanted to go out with you yesterday because your party was happening, and I wanted to go to it. Yeah. The Marty party, as they called it.
The Marty party. That's the one.
Wanted to go to your Marty party, but I couldn't do it because I had work, and then obviously when I get off work, I gotta work the shift. Give Steph a little bit of a break.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Hey, man, that is. It's no problem at all. This is a good Marty party too here doing the podcast.
Well, actually, it is a bit of a Marty party. This is the makeup party because I got you something, bro.
I see this.
You can see it right here.
This.
I took a photo of it. In fact, let me take a photo of you with it. We got to do something with that Instagram, man.
This is heavy, man.
I got to figure it out. Yeah, it's super heavy. It's
I feel bad. I don't know why. I don't know.
Why do you feel it? Because I decided to get you a present?
So.
Hold on.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the present is rectangular in shape. And instead of a little to from tag, there is just a Zima bottle cap taped to the top of the package.
Well, when I was wrapping it, I couldn't find a pen or a marker or something, but we had that Zima bottle cap from last week. Or whatever, and I was like, oh, well, I've got tape here. I'll just tape that on there, and there's no mistaking who it came from.
It's so perfect.
Yeah, nobody else would give you the Zima. So, so go ahead, man. I thought you just opened up right on the air. So, not really much more setup than that. Happy birthday.
This is a really good wrapping job. I'm impressed.
Happy birthday to you.
Best of Lou Christie. No, just kidding.
Yeah. All right. Open it up,
The
man.
70s punk rebellion. Ooh.
Yeah, no thanks.
Oh, my God. Awesome.
This is one of my favorite box sets of all
Really?
time. It's obviously bought it used at half price books, but it is incredible 4-disc set. It's CDs, but it's the book alone is probably worth whatever I paid for it. But it has like just a great collection of everything from the Clash, the Buzzcocks,
like the Damned.
The Damned are on there.
The
Rosillos are on there.
Band.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The
Dickies.
Yeah, so many great slits.
Dude, this is great.
Yeah, when I first got it, it's like I probably knew a third of the bands that were on there.
It even has like the Jam, This Is the Modern World and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Jam's on it.
Man.
Stuff like Into the Valley by the band that became Big Country.
The Oxen.
No. What's the...
I thought that the guy from Big Country was in a band. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought the guy from Big Country was in a band called the Oxen at one point.
He might have been. I think the Skids may have picked up a guy or two
really?
When they transferred over to Big Country. But
so there was this, this was probably like 10 or 11 years ago. I was an avid visitor of the website punknews.org.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really go there too much anymore, but for that scene, it was a really good resource, I thought, at that time. And there was a story that posted about Old Navy. They tried to like sell an Oxen, like the Oxen, that band. They tried to sell one of their tour T-shirts without paying them any royalties.
What?
Yeah, dude, and it was weird. And that's
Old
not
Navy, more like Old Pay Me.
Oh. That's not the first time that it happened. I think Urban Outfitters and H&M are also guilty of that big time.
Really?
And then
you were talking about Thrasher shirts last time. Like you think it's weird that stuff has come back. I was actually watching with my sister had VH1 Classic on the other day, and like you think
that's still a thing?
Yeah, it still is. She just had it running in the background.
What is it, just like Air Supply over and over?
No, well, I mean, I was going to defend it for a second, but then once I referenced the band that was on, it's really indefensible. They had a New Kids on the Block, like you got the right stuff, and it was hilarious because the guy from New Kids on the Block, Jordan, I know his name, Jordan Knight, was wearing a Bauhaus shirt.
Are you serious?
Could you imagine? Yeah, and it's from 1989, but it's like, are you kidding me? Like, you're not listening to Bela Lugosi's Dead when you go home. Like, come on, man. Like, that's
so funny.
Like, someone just puts you in that shirt.
Oh,
but
exactly.
Like, I was thinking about the Thrasher thing, where it's like, you're wearing some shirt that's probably irrelevant to you, that you don't really know the history of or care really, or even involved in the scene. You're just borrowing from it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess that's probably been going on forever.
It has. Like, it has. Yeah. I mean, we could sit here all day and gripe about like kids wearing Joy Division shirts and not knowing what
that actually,
not being able to name a song off of Unknown Pleasures, but
that actually doesn't bother me.
Really?
I'll tell you the truth. Yeah, my sister, for some reason, it really bothers her a lot.
Really?
Like, I found it funny, like in the New Kids on the Block situation, because they're kind of in that situation. It was a more current band, and they're borrowing as a way to project maybe a sort of underground hipness that they don't really have.
Yeah.
But Kids on the Street, who cares? You know what I mean? Like when I was a kid, I listened to the Ramones, and the Ramones, while they were still together, all of their classic Rocket to Russia, I was 2 years old when that album came out. You know what I mean? Like, so it's possible that they're into it, or even if you had caught me and said, if I was wearing a Ramones t-shirt and some old punk had walked up on me and said, hey, how many Ramones songs do you know? I would have been like, oh, well, Sheena's a punk rocker.
Yeah.
Blitzkrieg
I want to
Bop.
sniff some glue.
Yeah, there's some, I probably could list like a half dozen, and I would have loved those songs.
Psychotherapy,
Yeah. Well, now I can, Teenage Lobotomy.
Right.
And, I just want to have something to do. And I mean, we could just talk about
We could go on forever. Yeah.
But,
So the Ben Gibbard, the kind of main songwriter in Death Cab for Cutie and Postal Service and all that, whenever they broke, was remember reading like when Transatlanticism and like Plans, the album after Transatlanticism, when they were touring on that album, I remember reading an interview with him and he said something like, we're playing all these festivals now and there's all these kids wearing all these Ramones shirts and I feel like you should have to take a test to wear a Ramones shirt. And it wouldn't even have to be hard. Just name 3 Ramones songs. That's the whole test. Kind of like what you just explained.
Interesting.
Which is really funny.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the Ramones shirt became so iconic that there were people wearing it that didn't know the Ramones.
Exactly.
But I almost feel like it's edging them in the right direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's like
sure.
some kid today walking around in an X-Ray Specs shirt or something like that's maybe like it's funny to us because we know the X-Ray Specs, but to them it might be like, okay, well, you're moving in the right direction anyway. Better that than a T Swift shirt, I guess.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So this No Thanks compilation that you got me reminded me of something cool that I did when I was in Michigan. And so there's a I guess kind of like boarding school in Bloomfield Hills, which is a really affluent suburb of Detroit. There's a boarding kind of like a really it's like a very like highfalutin high school essentially, and I believe boarding school too.
Like
I think
charter school.
Yeah, it was something like that. It's called Cranbrook, and it's not only a school, but it's like they have an art museum there. They have a like museum of history and stuff like that there, and we went to the art museum when we were there because there was Shepard Fairey's early. If you're not familiar with Shepard Fairey, he's the guy that did the Obey and all that stuff.
The Obama
poster. Yeah. So he had an exhibition there that was his early work, like 1989 to like 1998 or something like that, and it was really cool. But the other exhibition they had there was this, I don't even remember what it was called, but it was basically all these punk flyers and ads. And it was this one guy's collection that lived in New York City. And Chris, I mean, thousands of just punk flyers. And I'm kind of scrolling through it on Instagram now.
Misfits,
sorry that you guys listening can't see
Black
it.
Flag.
Yeah. But
are these photos that you took? Or?
These are photos that I took of. And there were literally like 3 rooms of these prints. And,
cool.
And there was like Dead Kennedys ones and stuff. Like even like Elvis Costello and like, the Jam and like Motti stuff. And Courtney had never seen a lot of that stuff. And she was really intrigued by a lot of it. And there was even like English Beat and like all this ska stuff. There was like Devo, craft work.
That's going to be a fun when we get around to talking about 77, 78. Yeah. It's going to be a really fun time to talk about.
For sure, man. There's almost not, I mean, that would be like a 4-hour episode. I feel like that was a really
fertile time for
it was
rock,
influential year.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, man. So
you may know most of that stuff already. I don't know, but I hope there's stuff in there that you'll discover.
Oh no, for sure. Well, there was a band that I saw that I had just heard the name and like the Slits for sure. I don't think I've ever listened to them.
Yeah, you're going to love them. Bjork and the Sugar Cubes owe a lot to the Slits. Like
really?
When you hear that, you're going to, and you really ought to listen to Cut, the album. Like the track on here is Typical Girls, which is really cool and is, you are going to like, but there's some other stuff off of Cut that you definitely need to hear.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, like the Rosillos, I know. I love Flying Saucer Attack. There's actually a band called Flying Saucer Attack now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that is named after that song, I'm sure. Yeah.
They've got a really hilarious song called Top of the Pops.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know that song?
I do, yeah.
I love it. It's almost like they sound like a UK version of the B-52s or something.
Really?
I don't really know their catalog super deep, but the 2 tracks on here, they got another one like... My baby loves good sculptures or something like that. I don't know. It's really freaking funny.
That's amazing, dude. Yeah. There's some awesome stuff on here, man. Like the adverts.
Yeah.
I think they're from the UK. Obviously, The Damned. You can't. I mean,
so
can't
good.
Not talk about that. Richard Hell.
There's like got the Sham 69 songs on there that are all real big and huge. Those are funny and
this is great, man. I'm excited. There's even like Talking Heads on here and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff qualifies as punk, you know, like Blondie's on there. I think
absolutely.
It's Hanging on the Telephone, which is a punky song, which is
are you familiar with a band called The Nerves?
No.
The Nerves do a version of that song too, and their version is really, really good.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really
out.
awesome.
I love that song.
Yeah.
It's almost unbreakable. You know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and their version's awesome. It's so awesome, and I think it's on like Spotify. I think the Nerves only made like that one album, but I kind of wanted to do an '80s punk DJ night, and I've been trying to get like mashed together a playlist in my head, and I have some of the records like Black Flag and that kind of thing, and I posted a picture on Instagram with a bunch of my '80s punk records, and I was like, hey, what do y'all got? This is my 80s punk DJ set. Like, what do you guys think? And people were like saying cool stuff. And do you know Kevin Hitchcock? Do you know him?
No, I don't.
He's in an SSE now, but he put some Simple Plan in there, bro. Like just joking around, which I thought was really funny. He's like, Simple Plan, bro.
That's great.
Like really bad pop punk band that was friends with Hillary Duff.
Yeah, it needs more Avril Lavigne, Skater Boy.
Yeah, which is funny, but yeah. But yeah, man, that would be a lot of fun. So
I'd love to hear it, man.
Yeah. Some of those records tough to find though, and that's part of the thing. Because I feel like being a DJ now is more about curation. It's like you're kind of curating this, you're kind of taste making and curating this thing, and you're trying to find these records that are like hard to find and, will kind of strike a chord with people when they hear them and obscure and all that. So.
Yeah, I never really got into like DJs. I guess because I was a musician, it was like, we were always trying to make our own stuff, not present, but I always loved doing mixtapes, and I was a DJ,
in college,
very briefly
right?
in college.
Encyclopedia Brown.
It's like, exactly.
I'm sorry to bring that up.
No, it's all good, man. But so I always felt like I would have been a good one, but I just never pursued it, too busy playing the accordion, which has been the thing that I've been doing lately.
So we record this podcast. Chris has like a home. Him and his wife have a home studio here, and he's got all kinds of.
Described it or whatever. So maybe we should.
Yeah. He's got a lot of great instruments and stuff here, and but he has 3 accordions. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Well, yeah, you need 3, dude.
Good things come in 3s, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, so I've got a regular like keyboard style accordion, right? Which is one thing. Then I've got a diatonic accordion with just the buttons, and so it's they. I don't really. I mean, here's confession. I mean, I've just bought these accordions within the last year, and what I wanted was an instrument that I didn't have to try very hard with. Like I'm not trying to be like the freaking Jimi Hendrix of the accordion. Right?
Yeah.
Like I pretty much put it on and play Tom Waits songs and stuff. And
really?
Just myself. Yeah. I do a pretty good version of Fish and Bird by Tom Waits.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So I've got a couple, and then the third one is just a toy kids accordion that Evie plays.
That Evie plays?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Great.
So there'll be times where we have accordion jam night.
Oh, man.
The other night I was playing...
Please call me when that happens, because I will be here with bells on.
A jazz exploration of Kiss from a Rose on the accordion. So it's too bad. Maybe I'll work it and we'll release it for for 2019, and I'll have album of the year of 2019. It's just my jazz exploration of old Seal songs.
It's like a 17-minute long version.
Jazz. What was that on? That was on the Batman Forever soundtrack.
Yeah.
I'll just do that soundtrack on accordion, but jazz versions on the accordion. What do you think?
So there's a Method Man song on that soundtrack.
Even better. You ever see what Method Man was always missing? Accordion.
Yeah. Clearly.
And wasn't the U2 song on that? Got to talk about some U2. The Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me.
Yes. Oh my God.
Which is a pretty good song.
It's all right. Yeah.
A Batman song, it's all right.
Yeah. For sure. So you were talking about Tom Waits a moment ago, and have you seen the website The Hard Times? Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
So
I may have seen it, but
it's basically like a punk rock or like music oriented Onion. Essentially.
Oh, really?
And
I love it already.
Whoa, dude! And one of the articles that was recently posted was, "I accidentally killed Tom Waits. Now I'm king of the rail yard." And so many of those articles are just like laugh out loud funny. Like they had one that was like, "I'm a member of the resistance working inside Morrissey's band." It's so good, man. Like, And it's like they'll play off of like current news stories and stuff,
When
obviously.
something crazy goes on.
Yeah,
Like, Drake and Kanye feuding, or there'll be something.
Exactly. Yeah. And
I'll have to check that out because I love the
really
Onion.
funny. I think those guys are based in Austin that do it too. And you can actually apply to be a writer for them. You have to like pitch 3 stories and I think actually write one of your own. And I thought about doing it, but I just didn't have the time to do it. But man, it's so great. It's such funny stuff on that website. So
I love
I'm king of the rail yard.
One of my favorite, Tom Waits always tells crazy stories. One of my favorite Tom Waits stories that he tells is where like he it's probably all nonsense. He makes stuff up. You can tell, but he's talking about taking his kid out to the on a field trip, and he's like takes them to the guitar, like where they make guitars. And he doesn't say which guitar place, but he's like, they go and they make guitars, and he's like, I'm waiting for everybody to recognize me and be like, hey, Mr. Waits, can I have your autograph? And he's like, nobody. He's like, I'm there, and they're like making the guitar, and these guys are coming in and out. Nobody recognizes me. Made me feel really, really low. So then a month later, I take the kids on another field trip. This time they're going to the dump. I go to the dump and I get out and everyone's like, Mr. Waits, come over here, sign this. He says, like,
sign my bassoon.
Yeah. He says, they know my name at the dump.
That's a really great story.
Yeah. Clearly fiction, but very good.
His son Casey is like a metalhead.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
I never thought about the Waits legacy acts.
His son's in his band. His son plays drums, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the last time he toured, his son was his drummer in his live band. Pretty sure, yeah. But yeah, he said that he was telling a story. I had some friends that were super like into Tom Waits, and I think had some bootlegs, and he was like, "There's that madness coming out of Casey's room, that metal stuff or something like that." And he was listening to this band Static X, which is they're like a new metal band I think their lead singer like died recently too, which is kind of sad. But I think he kind of like griped a little in a playful way, about how his son's into like heavy metal and stuff. And
it is funny because Tom Waits would make a pretty good metal singer. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like all that. Come and eat sushi. Would be really good. You know,
like he could be the lead singer of a black metal band like tomorrow if he really wanted to.
He'd be wonderful at it. It'd be almost like Christopher Lee. Didn't he do like a metal album when he was like 90 years old?
Who's
you
that?
Don't know about that? Christopher Lee.
I don't know.
The Dracula. Saruman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
he did really?
He did a metal album, and people said it was good.
Oh my god!
I heard like clips of it, and it was like, that's hilarious. Count Dooku is doing doing metal, but like apparently he was super passionate about it and stuff, and super proud of it. So
really, I wonder who was in that band.
Oh man, I have no idea. It could have been anyone, man. Who wouldn't have just been
Exodus
like
or something?
Freaking drop everything to go play metal for Saruman. For Dracula, for God's sake.
Yeah, totally.
So that's
crazy, man.
Well, you want to talk about the year that we picked for this?
Yes, I would love to. So the year that we picked for this third episode is 2013. It's a very interesting year.
Yeah, 2013. So we were really coming way up into from the perspective of 1963 where we started, way up into the future,
Yeah.
But, I did mention 2013 a while back after we kind of landed on this one because I had an album in mind that it was actually suggested by part of the podcast. We'll get to that later.
Right.
But I'd been thinking about it, and it's one that I do love. And I was like, oh, well, how about this one? And then Marty picked his pick, and we landed on 2013. But this is the year that I basically listened to girl groups all year. So,
is it really?
Yeah, it actually is. And also, another thing about 2013 is the year we met each other.
It is the year we met. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so apparently I was listening to girl groups, bubblegum pop from the late 60s, and that Blur box set. I think that's pretty much, so in a lot of ways I was ducked out in this year. I was 35 years old too, and so we'll probably get into all that and aging and listening to new music and stuff. I think we ought to talk about that a little bit. But,
yeah, absolutely.
But the thing we typically do, unless you want to, before we get into 2013 specifically, is the teens or the tens.
The tens.
Do people say the teen? No one really says the teens.
It was aughts like the 2000s before 2010.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then 2000, but no one's really called this the teens. When someone says, "Oh, that was back in the teens," or "That was in the teens," they're usually talking about the 1910s, right?
Yeah.
So, what do we call it? 2010s? Do we call it the teens?
I mean, the teens, the tens. I mean, I don't know if it really matters. I mean, it's all kind of, objective, I guess.
I'm just curious, like, because usually they settle on it, like in a couple of years, it's going to be the 20s. Think about that.
And that's going to be weird, right? Yeah, I was just thinking about that actually, and I was almost going to say that, but yeah, for sure.
But what do you think about, so, I mean, obviously this is the decade we're living in now. We talked about 1990 last time. A lot has changed between 1990 and now.
Yeah.
What do you think about the music of the 2010s in general? And what do you think, like, or the things people, I mean, we're in the thick of it, and it's always really hard when you're in the thick of it to know, what it is that people are going to remember from the 2010s.
I think 2013 for me personally was the year that my taste, I don't want to say my tastes kind of sort of changed, but they were altered. That is the first year that, Courtney and I were together, and Courtney has very different musical tastes than I do, which not in a bad way, but she really likes electronic music and kind of dance music and stuff like that. And some of that rubbed off on me that year. And, that was kind of the year where it's like, I was talking about punknews.org and all that stuff. And like a lot of those bands, I felt like not the appreciation, but the way they were releasing material kind of dropped off significantly around 2012 to 2013, really. And I think things kind of changed. I think like more cool stuff got kind of pushed to the mainstream, if that makes sense. Like I said, there's also kind of a resurgence of the kind of synthy 80s kind of stuff.
I definitely felt that. Like, while kind of looking into it, it was like, I was actually surprised because I did check out, like, what were some of the biggest hits of the time. And it was like very much sounded like, oh, it's 1986 again.
Exactly.
And some of it, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to look like an old guy, because here's the thing. I'm always looking for new music, but a lot of times for me, new music is stuff from 10 years ago that I never heard, or obscure recordings. Like I might listen to outsider music, like stuff that, just is really weird. And for whatever reason, it kind of turns me on and I get into it. But it does mean that sometimes I don't know the big pop hits of the time, but I don't think it's like, I like to, maybe I'm kidding myself. Like, I don't think I've reached that point where I'm like, there's no good music made anymore. Yeah. You were talking about The Wrestler or whatever. Where
they were like,
it was great until he came along and ruined it.
Cobain ruined it all.
Yeah, like I don't feel like I'm that guy yet. But then sometimes when I look at like what everyone else is listening to, I'm like, well, I don't really know this, or I don't really I somehow miss this. You know what I mean?
And it was that year too. You had those bands like the Lumineers and who's the other band that's really popular that plays like banjos and stuff that really caught?
Oh, the Mumford and Sons guys?
Yeah. Like, I don't think that music is very good. I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone. It's just this, the Lumineers are just this kind of really safe kind of, not even country rock band, but like, just it's kind of bland. I'm gonna be honest. Like,
I mean,
not very
I don't know the
exciting.
Lumineers that well. Mumford and Sons, I definitely felt that way. Where it's like, well, okay, like here it comes again, roots rock revival. Right on time, everybody. Here it comes.
Right.
And it's like I don't hate it. Like I don't want to be like the kind of guy who dismisses something out of hand or whatever.
Exactly.
But there is a conservative streak and all that where it's like, well, this is real music. This is authentic music.
These are guys playing instruments or whatever.
Right. And as a musician, I can kind of relate to that a little bit, like, because I have my own beef with overly electronic music too, but I like to think that that's a little bit more philosophical than just like,
esoteric,
this is just computerized crap.
We
need to be listening to
pressing
banjos.
a button on a laptop.
I don't have that kind of attitude about it.
Right.
But when I do listen to music of 2013, it does seem like its roots are in like 80s synth music a lot.
Yeah.
And that also seems a little conservative to me, I guess I gotta say.
In a way.
Like one of the albums from this year is that Haim album, which is pretty
the
good.
Sisters or whatever.
Yeah. And it's pretty good,
Yeah, it's not bad.
But then you listen to it though, I was like, this kind of sounds like three Pat Benetars singing over like Phil Collins stuff or something. I'm like, like as bad as like your Mumford and Sons are kind of obviously a throwback, Americana stuff. Like this is kind of a throwback too. Maybe it's a more interesting throwback. Yeah, and I think probably it is, but it's still, I don't know. I'm just figuring out in my mind what I think about that. And I guess I just don't know, it's you just have to take it song by song and figure out what you relate to.
Right. I'm looking through the top 100 now, and there's It's really strange. It's kind of all over the place, obviously, but I
noticed that, like, the number one track was Macklemore's Thrift Shop. Like,
yeah.
I'll
say this about Macklemore. I don't care for his music, but he is a decent rapper, and he made that album like completely, like that guy, Ryan Lewis, I think that is the guy that does the beats, and like they made that album and just released it, and it just got huge out of nowhere, and and I don't know. I give him credit for actually putting something out decent. I just still don't think it's like great music. I don't know.
I'm going to make a confession here, right? So I heard about this a lot. Right?
Yeah.
And I heard about it all the time. Oh, Macklemore. Oh, I don't even know. Is it Macklemore or Macklemore?
I don't.
Who knows? Anyway, so, I heard about it all the time. And like, there was he won a Grammy and all this stuff. And
yeah. That album was huge back then, man.
Yeah.
Like, everybody was listening to that Thrift Shop song.
So when we were researching this, I was, like getting ready for it. I was like, well, what was on the charts? And, like Blurred Lines is on here. I know that. The Harlem Shake, of course, I know that. There's plenty of Roar by Katy Perry on this list. I know that song. I'm sure I heard the Florida Georgia Line cruise song. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say how just heinous that shit is.
I'm
sounding snobby in this episode. I apologize, but just to be honest here, like this is. I do have certain tastes, and sometimes those tastes dictate certain things, and sometimes I can feel very free about what I like and don't like. And I don't like Florida Georgia Line at all.
I think it's fine, man. I mean, here's the thing, like, and we kind of touched on this at the end of the last episode, and if I hadn't been so blasted tired, I probably would have like popped in. Actually, you were talking about, if you want to get face tattoos, go get face tattoos.
Whatever.
But I wanted to pop in like, but from my perspective, there's good music and bad music. And if you like bad music, then you're like, just to totally undercut as a joke what you were saying, but I think the truth is, I don't think of us as trying to be tastemakers on this thing. We're just talking about what we like and what we don't like, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's okay to talk about what we don't like and say why we don't like it. And I think something like Florida Georgia Line, I mean, I don't know it well enough to give you a point by point reason why it sucks.
It sounds like somebody at the corporate headquarters of Bass Pro Shops decided to make a country album. That's what Florida Georgia Line sounds like to me. It's all like bullshit marketing fluff country music that people eat up. Like,
here's the thing. Like, I love a lot of country music and a lot of classic country music. And I even like some stuff up through to the 90s and stuff.
Yeah, me too.
It started to get even a little bit more pop. Heck, I just saw Shania Twain like a couple of months ago.
Did you really?
Yeah, I sure did.
I'm sure
it was like a Pink Floyd concert. She freaking had lasers going everywhere and people in costumes and stuff. It was freaking crazy.
Say what you will about Shania, but I'm sure she puts on a really good show.
She really did. I don't know how much she was actually singing live, to be honest with you, but it kind of didn't matter because it was almost like a theatrical performance or something. Yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is like that sort of stuff is barely country. It's probably not really country.
It's
you know what I mean?
Pop
but it's okay.
It's fine. Yeah.
But the problem that I have with country after a certain point is they just didn't change. Yeah. Like they may have changed a little bit of some production techniques, but it just feels like country didn't find a way to evolve organically into anything. It just became 80s rock, really.
Yeah, pretty
like
much,
all that stuff that I hated in the 80s that made me turn away from rock, like now it's just living in country. It's like Bon Jovi or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good comparison, yeah. And like you said how I kind of sounded off on SoundCloud Rap the other day, like that stuff is way more interesting than any new country. And I don't even like that music, but it's still more interesting than Florida Georgia Line. Like it's just like, I don't know. And even some of those dudes like Dierks Bentley and I saw a commercial there was this guy that I can't remember his name, but like that stuff is even, I mean, it's not, I don't think it's good music, but it still doesn't sound like it was made by like, in a boardroom.
It was like corporate country. They used to talk about corporate rock.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it is now. Corporate rock just kind of moved to Nashville and put on hats.
Absolutely.
Basically, that's what happened. Well, let me cycle back to what I was saying about Thrift Shop. So I was like, oh, I'm sure I've heard this. And I put it on. I don't think I'd ever heard it before.
Really?
I don't know. And it was weird to me because it's the number one song of 2013. And usually those things are inescapable. And so I wanted to bring this up to say, like, maybe it's just me being, you know, I was 35 years old. Maybe I was listening to freaking the Ronettes. I wasn't listening to the radio. And so maybe it's just amazing that I somehow avoided this song. But there's a part of me that feels like, no, I'm pretty engaged. And even though I don't really listen to the radio, you know, I hear music when I'm out and about. And like when we were teenagers, if TLC had the number one song or something with Waterfalls, everybody heard it.
It would be everywhere.
It was everywhere. But I almost feel like that doesn't happen anymore. And I don't know if that's, you know, maybe some 16-year-old or someone who was 16 in 2013 could listen to this and be like, what? Like, how did you not hear Thrift Shop? Like, that was everywhere. But it almost feels like it's not true anymore. Do you think that's true, or do you think that's not true?
I think that's definitely true, because I think in a lot of ways technology has kind of dictated that. I think
so.
With Pandora and Spotify and all that stuff, we can kind of dictate what we want to consume much more than we could 10 years ago, you know? And I think it's kind of like, I've always prided myself. So do you listen to the radio at all?
No.
Neither do I. And
I haven't listened to the radio in 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as like Spotify and stuff like that popped up, and even before that, like eMusic, like we've talked about using eMusic, like that was my radio. Like I would just be like, and Steph and I've got like an old Case Logic book, and it's literally just eMusic mixes where we would go and find like cool stuff and make mixes for each other. And
that's cool.
So we've got all these. We've got a series called Steph's Fat Ride, like PHAT.
Oh man, that's
and it
awesome.
would just, it would be like Fat Ride 3, Fat Ride Strikes Again, Fat Ride. I mean, it was just all these ridiculous mixtapes. But that was our radio. It would still be new music, stuff that was challenging us. But, you know, we got to dictate what it was.
You were curating it yourself.
So I'm not having to sit through Florida Georgia Line or something on the radio because I don't want to hear it. You know, it may be something I ended up not liking, but so it's still a little bit of element of risk. And I didn't have to sit through commercials, and that was actually probably 50% of it there too, because radio commercials are the worst.
Yeah. Oh yeah, radio ads are no like jingles. It's awful, man.
Yeah.
I was talking. This was probably a year or two ago. We were all hanging out, and I have a couple of friends that are in their early to mid 20s. Actually, my friend Shannon. We were talking about like what music you listen to when you were in college, and I was like, the thing that was huge in college for me was like East Coast hip hop, like, you know, like the
really Biggie and stuff.
Yeah, well, not even that, but like, you know, DMX, the rapper DMX, like, so his whole crew, the Rough Riders, like, they had an album that was huge, and like Jay-Z's camp, like Jadakiss and all that stuff, like they were huge and stuff like that. And Shannon was like, the only rap song I remember from college was Thrift Shop. She was like, that song was everywhere when I was like a senior or whatever, which would have been, you know, 2013, I guess. But yeah, man.
So maybe it is still, I mean, it could be that I'm just out of the loop.
That was a stark difference.
Yeah, I mean, what do I remember I mean, my college experience was weird because I traveled around a lot and went to 5 different colleges.
Did you? Yeah, I think we talked about
it's really silly. Yeah. Like that's a complicated story how that happened. But so I don't have like one sort of master dorm room story where it's like, like we 4 years of this or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess Puffy was just. It would seem like when I was going into college, it was like Puff Daddy doing endless tributes to Biggie. Biggie was gone, but it was just like, here's another remake of a...
Yeah, he really milked that cow for all it was worth.
Yeah, he really did. It was like he had the Sting song or whatever, I'll Be Missing You, which sold a bajillion albums, and he's just like, let's just do that like 14 more times.
Yeah, seriously. You know? I mean, hey, man, he's a businessman, I guess. You know,
it worked. I mean, it worked 14 times.
It did work.
But that 15th time, they were like, that Godzilla soundtrack, okay.
With Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
So he played on SNL that year, and Jimmy Page played with him. And I remember he had like this huge chain wallet, and it looked so dumb.
Who, Jimmy Page?
No,
did?
P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever the fuck his name is. But yeah, it looked so. Even then, it looked really stupid.
He was trying pretty hard to like cross over.
He was
because like they did that All About the Benjamins with the rock version of it and stuff.
Yeah,
and it was like, you know. Yeah. And some of it kind of worked. I mean, I paid attention to it. That's another example of like, I wasn't really into, like, I didn't really know that much about the East Coast versus West Coast stuff or whatever until a little bit later, because we were so siloed into like alt rock. But But I was aware of what Puff Daddy was doing. Actually, that band that I was in that ate the surge steaks,
Yeah.
we did a cover of that All About the Benjamins, the rock version of it.
Did you really?
Yeah, that's actually a funny story. Okay, I'm going to just tell Phoenix stories all the time. And this is a new the Phoenix moment in the podcast.
Phoenix.
But we were in this band, and there was a country bar that was in Temple.
A country bar in Texas. Imagine that. But so they had like a night where they would allow us to play, right? So we were going to go play like this one night, and so we were like working up like slightly countrified songs. Yeah.
I think we even did like Eagles. I don't like the Eagles, but like we're getting ready, right? It was their hip hop night.
Are you serious?
I'm totally serious.
Oh my
we show
God.
up and there's no cowboy hats. It's all African American guys ready to roll, and we got a bunch of country songs ready to play.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It's like the Blues Brothers.
Yeah,
like
in reverse or something.
Yeah.
It was just. It was so crazy.
The Rawhide theme.
So they were just like, they hated our guts. And
so did you play the set you were going to play?
We played parts of it, but we played a little bit of All About the Benjamins, and they went crazy. Like they were into it, but then we were like, we can't really do the whole thing. And we were like, because we weren't credible rappers. We weren't like a rap rock group or something, like we'd just been freaking cutting our teeth on Hotel California.
Where was the communication breakdown there exactly? Like, hey, we're going to book a band for hip hop night. Like, why didn't they book a DJ or something?
I have no idea. You got to ask. Well, they were country clubs, so they probably were like, them kids, they like them hip hop songs. We should have a hip hop night. Yeah, we'll have a band play.
They like that Puff Daddy.
I think they didn't. I mean, someone didn't know what they were doing, right? And it wasn't explained to us.
Yeah.
So it was just really fun. We did a version of "Creep" by Radiohead.
Oh,
yeah. So me singing "Creep."
Oh, really?
Actually, that's perfect. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. Is perfect for that gig.
For that, yeah. That's so bizarre, man.
So strange.
So you play. Man. How long was the set? Like, how long did you play for?
I think we played like 2 hours.
Are you serious?
Yeah. We took a break at one point and came back, and we were not invited back to play again. That was a big disaster.
That wasn't your fault, though. Which I think
that really wasn't
stupid.
Our fault. We didn't know better, and we had no business playing a gig to that many people to begin with. We were not at the level where we should have been doing it. So I don't know how we scored that gig, to be honest with you. Temple, Texas, nothing going on. That must be it. We were the biggest band in Temple, Texas because we'd played a gig before.
Yeah. That's cool. You guys play instruments. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, you should play our hip hop night.
You should play our hip hop night. What? Oh my God. That's funny, man.
Ridiculous. But anyway, that's way too far back. But I guess I was just surprised at like the thrift shop thing, and I also was surprised at how kind of terrible the song was.
Yeah,
like listening to it, I was like,
I don't know.
I think it's kind of a novel thing to rap about.
Yeah.
But apart from the novel, it was almost like a novelty song. Listening to it, and I was really kind of surprised. That this was the number. Like, I'm not surprised that it was a hit. I was surprised that it was the number one hit of the year.
Me too.
Like that was like some "I'm too sexy" category or something. Like
this is the biggest song of the year, really, guys?
Yeah, it doesn't speak well for the year, I'm afraid to say. Yeah. Anything on here? This is the year of "Wrecking Ball" by Miley Cyrus. That's on here, which is I'm okay with that song. I don't love it, but I don't think it's the worst pop music has ever produced.
I'd agree with that.
"Diamonds" by Rihanna. I like that song.
Yeah,
right?
I do too. I think Rihanna's really good.
She is really good. "Stay" is on this list too, which I like. "Royals" by Lorde, which I actually kind of love. That was a song.
Did you listen to that album a lot?
I actually didn't. It's
really,
just the one
the
track.
Song? Yeah.
Yeah. Was the rest of the album any good?
I didn't listen to it, but I've heard it's actually not bad. She just came out with an album that apparently is really good.
Yeah.
2017, I think.
Yeah.
And apparently it's great. It's called Melodrama, her newest album. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to go back and visit. The first thing that I thought when I heard that song was like, this is either someone punching way above their weight, and let's just be like the one good song and she'll disappear, or we're seeing the beginning of something.
Yeah,
I think maybe we're seeing the beginning of something. I think it's sort of, I still think it's good, and it was a song that was heard everywhere.
Yeah.
I think. I like the perspective in that song.
I do too, and it had a very kind of like, cadence, very interesting cadence to it that sounded almost like a rap song. It's like she was kind of rapping but singing, which I thought was cool.
I like the lyrics a lot too. I know they tried to position that song as, well, it was about that photo of George Brett and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But come on, don't blow smoke up. This is about the difference between the haves and the have-nots.
Exactly.
In 2013, and we're going to get into this pretty hard actually when we look at our music choices, because both of them have some elements of that in it. But
for sure.
This is a few years after the recession kicked off and everything like that. And I do think that there's a lot of stuff in the air about people who are privileged and people who are not privileged. And I think that song absolutely speaks to that really well. It's not exactly the Fortunate Son of 2013, but it is a song that voices what I think a lot of people were feeling.
Well, that song kind of says to me, we think we're going to be this, we think we're going to live this really amazing, posh, upper tier lifestyle, but in all reality,
you got to be born into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, that's what I take from it.
You have to be part of the 1% kind of thing.
Yeah. And we'll never be those people.
Exactly.
And it's an exception. And yet we still fantasize about
exactly.
it. And she doesn't tell you what to do with that idea.
Exactly.
And
which
maybe
is
that's good.
Kind of good. Yeah, I agree. It's just kind of a very astute observation on the times we live in, and it was written by a 15-year-old girl, which is crazy.
It's great, And I'm dropping Steinbeck quotes too, but I think it was, or maybe it was Upton Sinclair. Anyway, one of these guys who said, socialism never caught on in America because everyone sees themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires, right? One day we'll all be millionaires, and one day, and it's just amazing to think that Lord found a way to take that idea and kind of write a song about it that became a huge hit,
Exactly.
And it doesn't sound like a chip on your shoulder kind of, there's some anger in it, but
she
it's
doesn't
not
sound pissed off or anything.
It doesn't sound like it's trying to be an anthem it's not now become my personal army to fight the,
she's not trying to be Rage Against the Machine or something.
Exactly.
For sure.
So to me, I think there's always a value in something like that, especially when you're looking at charts, with this, I'm just going to say this much garbage on it, What do you think of Katy Perry? Because she pops up on the list a couple of times.
That's a really good question. I don't know. I don't really care for her, to be honest. That one song. So I will say that me and Graham and his wife were all hanging out once when this was probably around this time, and this is the time when that Firework song was really popular. You remember that song?
He used to play that in the bathroom at work.
At work, another bathroom song. So
appropriate place for it.
I kind of was railing on how much I disliked her and that kind of thing, and Michelle, Graham's wife, was like, well, she does have that song Firework where it's baby, you're a firework, baby, let your fires burst or whatever. And she kind of felt like that was a call to arms for, women to kind of respect themselves and that kind of thing, which is actually kind of cool, I suppose. Yeah. But I don't know. It's kind of,
there's a saying that even every bad president does something good, So even when you look back and you're and I'm not getting into politics, but there's everybody listening right now has a president that they hate, right? Yeah. But even when you look at it, they're well, there's some things that they usually accomplish that's pretty good. Yeah. You can say the same thing about pop stars, you know what I mean? Even that, oh, well, it got people really, the same way Christina Aguilera's Beautiful did 10 years earlier or something. And you can't really argue against that, but does that really make it a good song? I mean, anybody can come out.
Does that really give them merit?
Yeah,
I guess.
I don't know the answer to that. My thing about Katy Perry, and this is not to I don't really mean this to trash her because her music is whatever. I don't really listen to it. I've heard one or two. I think Dark Horse is kind of interesting. Yeah. There's a couple of things that aren't so bad, and she seems funny enough and everything. So I don't have an anger thing about. Yeah. But I guess the thing that I feel about Katy Perry is she seems like the kind of artist that would have been kind of one album and done earlier. Yeah. But the record companies now, they get behind something and they just stay behind it now. They're you know what? I'm not going to let any criticism, doubt my faith in this because it's a brand that we can keep going back to. Right. And it seems like it's not just Katy Perry, but it seems like there's a lot of pop artists that are now just kind of a brand that keep. Yeah. As long as we can keep selling this, we're not going to look for the next big thing. We're just going to keep pushing.
Well, that's how the music business is set up now. I mean, it's all branding and marketing, and it was that before, but it's even more so now that you're not selling a physical product anymore. The music is all just streamed on the internet, and you know, people aren't buying CDs and stuff, not like they were, you know, 15, 20 years ago. So, you know, I think that's a really astute business model nowadays to focus on. Like let's just push the Katy Perry brand like it's perfume or like you know, whatever, and you know, see how it does.
But once you do that, there's no like Tiffany was big for a year and then gone. It's like if Tiffany showed up now, it would be Tiffany would show up. They'd get way behind her. They'd push stuff out. And then when everybody's tired of Tiffany, new Tiffany album came out. Also the perfume brand, also the clothes brand. It's like they wouldn't give up on it. And you know, maybe there would be a decent song on that album that gets played on the radio a whole bunch, you know, and they would, or whatever. And it would just keep going.
Right.
And I guess I know that I feel like maybe this is the downside to doing a podcast on Sunday morning because we're kind of cranky right now, you know, but
you think?
I don't know. I don't want to feel like I'm saying, oh, well, that's just trash.
Yeah.
But it just feels like it's different. Like it's interesting to me that we could still talk about Katy Perry now, like, because it does feel to me like if she had popped up in the 70s or if she had popped up in the 80s, like she'd be over now. She'd be gone.
I think that's a pretty good comparison. Like she would have been like Tiffany, you know, and even I Think We're Alone Now is kind of like, that's about, you know, as scandalous as it could get in 1986 or whenever that album came out. And then like 2011, it's like I Kissed a Girl, like, whoa. So, I mean, I would probably agree with that.
But I guess what I'm saying is like, it does feel like I look down this list and there's a lot of people who are still a going concern that I'm surprised were, you know, were going concern back then. Cause I would have thought, you know, I mean, I don't know where One Direction's career is in 2018, but it seems like they're still around.
Well, that Harry Styles, the guy from One Direction, he has a really, really successful solo career now.
Right.
And like, it's actually not, I mean, it's nothing I'm going to go out and buy and listen to all the time or stream, but it's not terrible, actually.
But weren't most of these guys just done by that? You know, like that kind of artist? Wouldn't we be like 3 One Directions down? Are we on 3 Direction now?
Yeah.
Wouldn't we? You know what I mean? Like the New Kids on the Block are big for 3 years and then gone.
Yeah, well,
just gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Going back to the 60s, you know what I mean? Like you would have the Archies or something, the Monkees. The Monkees are a great example. Like, and I like the Monkees, but you know, the Monkees are around for 3 years and then they become a joke. You know, pop stars used to have a shelf life, and now most of the time it's like everyone's Madonna now. They just last forever. You know,
right. Well, and there's not as much space too. There's not a lot of, you know, there's not as many of them. I think that's a really good point you made about we're just going to get behind this brand and push it until, you know,
we just physically can't push it anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Or the artist gets to a point where they either can't perform or look a certain way, which is really sad, actually.
Yeah, it
you know,
is.
like Katy Perry is not going to be, you know, like riding on top of this crazy lion when she's in her 50s. Like, you know, I mean, who knows? Maybe
Madonna does that still.
Yeah,
though,
it's like
so I don't
Cher
know.
and Madonna are still touring. That's true, but I don't know.
Yeah, it just seems like there was a change somewhere, and I'm looking at this list. I kind of feel it. As far as we can kind of get Carry On by Fun. I noticed that there's like the Millennium Whoop. Have you heard about that?
No.
So that's
the Millennium Whoop.
Yeah, you don't know that concept? Oh, you got to look into this because you would love this. So someday look up. So there's this idea that a millennial whoop. Sorry.
Millennial whoop.
So the millennial whoop is songs, and I kind of blame it on Arcade Fire, and I love Arcade Fire, but that like you hear that in song after song after song, and I see that song Carry On by Fun, and I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yeah,
the millennial whoop.
Yeah,
you know.
So that band. It's really interesting. That guy that's the main brainchild behind that band, what is his name?
I don't know. I know his face. But I've seen the videos and stuff.
His name's Jack something. Jack Antonoff, I think. And he's actually a really good pop songwriter. He has another band too that's like a little different than Fun. Bleachers is his other band. It's actually, Bleachers is kind of interesting, like a little more interesting than Fun, I'd say. And it feels like Bleachers is like his natural progression from Fun into like, I'm now like a little older and I can kind of, you know, I'm a little more creative and I'm a little more open kind of thing. But
interesting.
But yeah, the other guy that was in Fun with Jack Antonoff was in this band called The Format, and they were like a pop punk band. And I remember seeing them years and years and years ago open for somebody. I remember being on message boards or something, and some guy was like, the guy from the Format is in this terrible band called Fun now, and they opened for so-and-so, and they were awful. And it's like they opened for like, who knows who, like some like punk band that was huge or whatever, and it probably wasn't the right opening act or whatever, because Fun wasn't a punk band. They were trying to do something way different. They were trying to make pop music, whatever, which is fine. But yeah, it was really. I remember weird.
In the '90s there was this group called Eve's Plum. Do you know them? No. They had a really minor like alternative alt rock hit. It's a pretty good song.
Really?
I forget what was it. I'm remembering the melody, but anyway, so Eve's Plum comes out, and we think they sound really cool, and I hear an interview with them on KNAC or something, and it's like, they're going to be big, and then nothing,
Yeah.
So, all right, so then like 4 years later or something, do you remember Vitamin C?
Yeah.
She's the lead singer of Eve's Plum.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so she goes from this like punk rock, underground punk rock, kind of punky, grungy alt rock band, and then suddenly she's singing "Put a Smile on Your Face,
oh my
Make
God.
the World a Better Place."
So,
and it was like, what? How did you go from like Nirvana to the Spice Girls that
wait a second? Wasn't Vitamin C like a pop singer?
Yeah.
So, I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's the same deal where it's like it went from
Eve's
like
Plum.
Yeah. So
we
were all like,
gig's a gig, man.
Yeah, I know. It's fine. It's like whatever keeps you in business.
Exactly.
And that Smile song is whatever. It's fine.
What's her face? What's the Mandy Moore?
Yeah.
She was married to Ryan Adams for a minute, and she made like a 70s glam album and stuff.
Really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good.
Wild.
Yeah,
No,
I know, yeah.
I know that she like kind of had a brain in her head and did a lot of like crazy, like she did. Yeah. Isn't she in that like movie about the Christian camp or something?
I don't know.
What was that called? Yeah.
Jesus Camp.
Yeah. I think that may have been it. Yeah. So she was she's a more interesting person than the pop. But the thing is it doesn't surprise me when someone goes from like being a pop star to doing albums with the Flaming Lips, right?
Yeah,
like that doesn't surprise me. Like at a certain point you want to break out of it. It does surprise me when someone starts off in like a punk band and then goes to being in a pop star or something.
Right.
It seems like such a 180 philosophically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Well, and it's like, do you know like the UK Subs punk, like a British punk band? Yeah. Like their lead singer was like a pop singer in the 50s before he was even in a punk band.
I didn't know
Charlie
that.
Harper, I think his name is. Yeah, he was like he was in like a doo-wop group or something weird like that. And then like he was like, this punk thing's kind of huge. Maybe I'll start a punk band. That sounds fun. And then they became the UK Subs.
That's cool as hell, though, because like, punk, one of the things about punk was trying to get back to like the energy of early rock and stuff that they felt had been lost.
Yeah.
Not everybody was like that philosophical about it, but that was one of the things. So it's natural that like someone from the 50s would be like, I totally identify with that. Like right. And I'm going to butcher his last name, but Ray Manzarek from
The Doors.
The Doors, like he was doing like producing albums by X and everything.
They did a cover of Soul Kitchen.
Yeah.
X did, which is an awesome cover, by the way.
Yeah, I love X, man.
So do I, man.
They've got a live album from 2004. I was thinking about albums that I would pick. Yeah, it's 2004, so they're much older and stuff. Yeah. It's called Live in Los Angeles. I've been listening to it a lot, and I freaking love that live album. And I'm like,
they're still really good live. I've heard. I've not seen them.
I've never seen them live either.
I've heard from people that I trust opinions on music on that they just bring.
Billy Zoom is a killer guitar player too, and he's got like a 50s thing that he can pull out too.
Yeah, for sure.
Great, so.
Well, and I mean, Exene and John Doe. I mean, you can't really. Those two, I just work so well together, and they're both they both sound so good still, and it's just it's good, man. So.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's backtrack. Favorite song on the 2013 list, pop list?
This is interesting. I've been scrolling through this for the last 20 minutes or so that we've been talking, and it's kind of tough, honestly. And even with like all of the kind of dog bones that are on here, for lack of a better term. So one of the songs on this list that you would not suspect that I would like, but I really do like. There's a Drake song on this list called "Hold On, I'm Going Home," and it is a really good song.
This is the one that you put on the playlist?
Yes.
Yeah, I listened to that.
It's a great song.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Got really interesting production, and I think Drake as a singer is quite good. I think he has a really good voice.
I was trying to figure out, is that Drake singing?
That is Drake singing, yeah.
He should have been a singer.
He is a singer. He sings and raps.
He does?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He sings sometimes and raps sometimes. I don't think he's a very good rapper personally, but some people like him a lot, and that's fine. But I think he has a really good voice. So, I'll give him that.
I was trying to figure out if this is like one of those things where it's like the featuring guy is the one singing all the time.
Right, that Majid Jordan or whatever.
Yeah,
no, I don't think that's, I think like the refrain is that's the guest there. But, no, I'm pretty sure that's him singing. So
well, good. Wow, this has been mind blowing. You found a Drake song I like.
I know, it's crazy, right? So yeah, it's actually a great song. Like, other than that,
well, I'm going to get behind Royals since we already kind of talked about it. I think that's probably my favorite track.
Right
here.
There was one other song that I saw that I thought was good, but maybe not. Maybe that's the only good song on here. There's a Kendrick Lamar song that's pretty good, but I don't think it's my favorite Kendrick Lamar song, so I don't think I can sign off on it being the best song on this list or my favorite song on this list.
2 Chainz makes the list. That's great.
Gangnam Style by Psy.
Yeah, that's great. I like that.
That song was huge.
It was.
Oh my
crazy
God.
that. Oh, by the way, I listened to the Shin.
Oh, you did listen to that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Is it cool?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a little bit more, at least what I heard was a little later 60s, so it was a little bit more psychedelic and crazy.
That's what
but
I
in
heard.
a way that made it even better, so it's pretty wild. I didn't dig into it enough to be able to speak about it.
Is it on Spotify?
No, I found like a YouTube video.
of it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It would be better to listen to it, I think, on something with a little less compression. But
yeah, I hate to say it, man, but I think that Drake song is the only song that I think is really any good on this list. I mean, and Royals is good. Oh, Get Lucky, Daft Punk.
Yeah, Get Lucky made the list.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I look through it and I'm just like, oh man, this was worse than I thought. Yeah. I think there are 3 Florida Georgia Line songs on this list.
Oh my gosh.
Like if that tells you anything. And there's also Imagine Dragons.
Yeah.
Like that
I was listening to
griped about before.
Going back to Imagine Dragons in the toilet radio that we hear in the bathroom. They play that Thunder song, that Thunder. Feel the Thunder.
That's kind of an interesting song.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I was listening to it, I'm like, it sounds like the Oak Ridge Boys. Like, Thunder, feel the thunder.
Yeah.
Elvira. My heart's on fire.
Isn't Elvira, Alabama?
Feel the thunder. Feel the thunder. No,
is that Oak Ridge
no,
Boys?
That's Oak Ridge Boys.
Is it?
I think.
Okay.
Who knows?
You might be right.
But I think it sounded like the Oak Ridge Boys with like ludicrous production. Like it's just like what?
That is kind of an interesting song. Like I'll give it that. It's not something I want to listen to all the time, but if it's on, I'll be like, this is kind of interesting. The thing that I don't like about that band is like this is what rock music is now. Imagine Dragons, and like that just kind of.
I'll say this for them: they figured out how to be a rock band in a hip hop world.
Yeah,
I mean, and some of the musical production stuff sounds more like hip hop production, and they're still kind of a rock band. Like, what's the Evie actually loves Believer?
Really?
You made me a believer.
Oh,
believer. And I think that's actually a pretty good rock song. You know what I mean?
Bad.
Like, I've had to hear it a freaking million times, but like, so I'm sick of it. But I mean, there's something to that. It's not 2013, but
right.
If all their stuff was on that level of quality, I wouldn't listen to it, but I wouldn't resent it. It'd be fine.
Well, and I think those 2 songs are much better than the song that's on this list, Radioactive. I don't think Radioactive is a very good song, but those other 2 songs are much better. I feel like they're much more interesting. Like the production is much better, and they kind of take some chances. And that's the thing. It's like if you can take some chances in like how the song sounds. Like how they have the little like that the little high pitched squeals.
But like to me, that sounds like how low can you go? How low can you go? It just sounds like, and that was like 10 years earlier or something. So there's a part of me that's like, well, it's although I'm not against that, but it just sort of sounds not dated, but like it's not edgy or anything either.
Right.
Kanye was doing stuff like that.
A long
time
That's
ago.
true. That's a good point. Yeah, that was totally like a Kanye production trick that he employed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. So my least favorite song on this list, I'm going to say, is Thrift Shop.
Yeah.
That's my least favorite.
Yeah.
So, although Blurred Lines is on here, actually, it's got a pretty good groove. Here's why I forgive Blurred Lines is because it gave us the really great Weird Al word crimes. Which is really,
I don't think I heard.
You've got to hear that one. It's so like that's genius. Like that's one of Weird Al's most genius lyrics.
Really?
Yeah, because it's all about like people mistaking like using words wrong. Yeah, exactly. But the way he threads it all together is so perfect. Yeah. So Stay of Execution for Robin Thicke. I'm going to go after Macklemore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My least favorite song on this list. I mean, in some of this really weird, vapid pop stuff, like, I don't know, like, I've never listened to a Demi Lovato song, you know?
Yeah, I know.
I'm not going to say anything bad about her because who knows?
Yeah, there's a lot on here that I don't know. So, you know, I can't really say, like, there's a Fall Out Boy song on here. I don't know if that's worse than Thrift Shop or not. Maybe it is, you know?
I don't know, like Ed Sheeran, one of his songs is on this list, and I completely just loathe that guy. I think he's awful.
You want to just say that's the worst one, even though you don't know the song?
Yeah. I feel like there's another one on here though that I can check. And I'm not going to say Florida Georgia Line because that's too obvious. But let's see.
He's another one that I'm kind of surprised. Ed Sheeran is still a going concern. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like,
well, he's another one that's doing like hip hop production and singing. Like,
but you know, like Rick Astley didn't last 5 years.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
Like,
and that's kind of what Ed Sheeran's doing. That kind of trip for sure. But yeah, that I'm in love with the Shape of You song.
Yeah.
That song sounds like it was written by a serial killer. It sounds like that some like serial killer was watching a woman out of his window and was like, I'm in love with the shape of you. Yeah. Oh my God. It's supposed to be sexy, but it is the most unsexy song I think that's ever been written. Like, it's awful. Like, it's just so bad. But I mean, that's not a 2013 song. I just really felt like I had to get that opinion out en masse. So that's that. But yeah, I mean, if I had to pick one, I would probably pick Blurred Lines.
Okay.
I think that song's just...
Yeah, just because you haven't heard the...
It's just not
and
good.
You know, going back to what we were saying earlier about Never Be Royals, you know, like here's a guy who is like the son of a, you know, an 80s actor and all
Alan
this stuff.
Thicke's kid.
And so he spends a bunch of money and works with
T.I. and Pharrell.
And, you know, it's like, okay, you know, like, is that where the music industry is now?
Yeah.
Please, you know.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because Pharrell had something to do with one of my favorite songs on this list, Get Lucky, and then my least favorite song on this list, which is really strange.
Well, he's a chameleon. He can go back and forth.
Very much. And like, if you're going to throw like, you know, $500,000 out to do a Robin Thicke song, like, yeah, of course I'll do that. Yeah. I'll take that money and make a goofy, whatever, like Marvin Gaye ripoff song, you know.
Although, in fairness to those, I didn't really hear the Marvin Gaye thing.
I didn't either.
Like, when I listened to him back to back, it doesn't sound to me like a straight ripoff. You know?
I agree.
So a little bit on their side on that one.
And Marvin Gaye's, it's funny too, because after that happened, his estate, whoever controls his estate, they tried to sue Pharrell again for Happy. You know that song?
Oh,
Happy?
really?
They tried to say it sounded too much like Ain't That Peculiar. Which it doesn't.
No,
I'm sorry.
That
there is no case.
They were like, hey, that worked the first time. Let's do it again.
Let's see.
Working like the record company. Let's just try it again.
Yeah.
Make the money.
Seriously, man.
No, that doesn't sound enough like Ain't That Peculiar. At that point, you're just suing anybody. You know, it's got a hummable melody, so it sounds like Sugar Pie Honey Bunch or something. You know,
seriously, man. But yeah, that's probably what I would.
James Brown's estate ought to sue everybody at that point. You know what I mean?
James Brown would sue Dave Matthews
exactly.
80 times over. Like,
and I'd be on
you're
James
making
Brown's
rock music with an acoustic guitar suing you.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Some of those guys would do it too if they thought there was a buck.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So 2013, bit of a mixed bag. We did pick some cool stuff on our actual playlist, on the Spotify playlist.
Yeah, we did.
You turned me on to a couple of things. There's an Inspect a Deck track that I didn't know.
Czarface, and there's been 3 other Czarface albums since that one.
I got to check them out.
They're
good.
I loved They're all really good, And Inspect a Deck from the Wu-Tang Clan is Czar. Him and 7L and Esoteric are the producers that produce those albums, and yeah, they're all awesome, man. They're all really, really, really good. So
cool. Yeah. So definitely check that out, guys. If you get a chance. We're starting to do kind of a release schedule where we release the playlist the day before. So we're going to release these. You'll notice if you're getting this right on day one, hot off the press, they're coming out on Tuesdays now. Right. We'll release the playlist on Monday.
Right.
So you get a chance to find out what year we're covering, get a chance to get familiar a little bit with at least some of our picks from that year. And and then listen to us wax poetic about it. So hopefully you're already familiar with that Inspect the Deck track by now. So.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's some other stuff too. Do you want to go ahead and get into our album choices?
I think that's probably a good idea. Let's do it.
Do you want to? I think we ought to start with mine. This time.
That's a good idea. Let's do yours first.
So my pick for album of the year of 2013. Oh yeah, man! Straight from Columbia University.
Yep.
the guys at Vampire Weekend with Modern Vampires of the City. And I think that's one of the more important rock bands of the turn of this last decade, wouldn't you say?
I would say so, yeah.
Even before this album, this is their third album.
Yeah.
And but definitely my favorite of their albums. So,
agreed.
Modern Vampires of the City. That track is called Unbelievers, and we're going to get into like the themes of that album probably at length here in a little bit. But what was your first encounter with Vampire Weekend? Do you remember?
Probably A-Punk and Oxford Comma. I remember around the time I moved here, my buddy Mark was like, I don't really like new bands, but this Vampire Weekend band is really, really interesting. It was really cool. And like, he dug the whole kind of like Paul Simon vibe they were going for and stuff. And, I think that Oxford Comma was kind of playful and fun and interesting, and it was kind of different, and it kind of sounded like this like art scholar music kind of stuff, with a little bit of tongue in cheek, so it doesn't sound like they were trying to pull it over on you. It wasn't sounding like they were trying too hard or trying to be overtly snobby. It's just like it was good music, it was fun, it was light, I didn't listen to Contra really, their second album up until we did the research for this podcast. I was probably just very much a casual fan. Like those two songs were pretty much all I knew. So when you said you wanted to do this album, I was a little not scared, but I was a little apprehensive. Like, Vampire Weekend album. It kind of interested me that you really gravitated towards this album a lot, just because I wasn't sure if maybe that's where your taste lied. But I think the paradigm that I was working on was their first album, was A-Punk and those songs, and which, like I said, are not bad songs, and I think are a very good presentation for this band starting out of the gate. But I was a little surprised that you picked this, and but when I listened to it, I completely understand why you picked it.
Right.
Like this definitely sounds like Kris. I wouldn't say like this definitely sounds like Kris's music, but this definitely sounds like something Kris would enjoy as far as like the production choices, the lyrics, the subject matter that is dealt with on this album. It's interesting. So
yeah, cool, man.
Yeah,
my exposure to Vampire Weekend is kind of similar to yours in the sense of like it was Oxford Comma that probably got me into him, and then A-Punk. And I listened to the first album a few times, but I can't pick out every track on it. And say, okay, that's Cape Cod, like I know most of them, but those were the two like sort of top flight singles that I heard. And actually the first place I heard them was there was one weekend where Steph went out of town. I guess that was my Vampire Weekend. Now that I think about it, easy. But like Steph was out of town visiting her folks, and this was before Evie came along. Obviously, this was like 2008, I guess. And I was just around the house doing stuff for about 4 days.
Okay.
And I'd got iPhone for the first time.
Oh, okay.
And the iPhone had an app, and it was like, when you first get an iPhone, you're like experimenting with apps, and especially back then, you're like, and there was an app that was like listen to radio stations from around the world, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and those apps still exist, but,
this was before Spotify, right?
Yeah, this is pre-Spotify, so I was probably still, I don't know if I was still signed up to eMusic at that point. Maybe I was. I think it was Spotify that when I switched over. No, I switched to iTunes at a certain point. So I don't know. This may have been in a period where I was just buying iTunes songs or whatever every now and then. It was a little bit more expensive. And so anyway, I was like, oh, cool. I'll check out these radio stations from New York. So I checked out, I think it was like WFMU or something like that, from New York. And I was like, all right, well, what are they playing? And I guess the hit, it was Oxford Comma at that time. Cause I remember hearing it and being like, whoa. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, and it's funny, he's like singing about Little John and stuff. And like, first the window, then it's to the wall, Little John. And it's got like this sort of kooky sort of bargain basement jazz guitar solo in the middle of it. And like when I played it for Steph the first time, she's like, that sounds like one of your guitar solos. I'm like, hey, I think that's a joke, But
that's so funny.
But yeah, so like Oxford Comma, and the other one from that was White Winter Hymnal by the Fleet Foxes.
Yeah, that's a good song.
Yeah, so like those were two songs that they played that weekend that I like listened to a whole bunch. And so, and there was that was kind of a special weekend because there was like a friend that I had not been in touch with, and I wasn't able to contact on social media for many years.
Oh, wow.
And like I reconnected with them that weekend.
Oh, interesting.
And it was so like I felt good because like that was a friend that like we weren't on the best terms when we stopped being friends. And so like those two songs were both kind of light and upbeat. Well, I mean, White Winter Hymnal maybe has some darkness in it under the surface. But they're not like heavy songs. And so I just remember like being happy that weekend that like, oh, cool. Whatever I thought maybe I'd been worried for years that like that friendship had died on a down note, but then it was like, no, there's no problem. We're cool again, And then it was like this music. So I always kind of associate Vampire Weekend with those good feelings. And
that's cool. That's a really, really endearing story, Chris.
Oh, thanks man.
For sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome, man.
Of course.
I've got lots of those. I'll tell you.
So do I.
But yeah, so I always associate Vampire Weekend with that. But there's a lot of stuff about, especially those first two Vampire Weekends, that are a little off-putting too, and we probably ought to get into like what their background is and everything like that. These guys started off like they were from Columbia University. They're Ivy League guys,
right?
They dress in polo shirts and all this kind of stuff. Like they sort of play into
downs and all that.
So they come across as total dorks. Like when you see them, I think I look at them, I'm like, oh well, these guys don't. They look like, I don't know, like guys who were at the country club and went golfing.
Seriously, yeah. Or they look like, they just look like really hoity-toity college kids. Like they grew up like on the coast or something, or like they were raised in the Hamptons or Montauk or some place like upstate New York that affluent people live, and they came into the city to go to college, and here they are, kind of thing. Like they have kind of like a limousine liberal kind of vibe. Yeah, if you've ever heard that term,
I have.
And that's. I don't want to say that was off-putting to me at first, but like when I saw them, I was like, who are these?
Yeah.
Who are these kids?
No, it was off-putting. Like, I'll admit that it was off. I mean, once I learned more about them and everything, I realized it wasn't like, it's a little bit more complex than that. Yeah. But certainly if you're talking about first impressions, like if someone said Vampire Weekend, like those bunch of like prep school, preppy preppers, whoever,
prep school, preppy preppers, whoever,
a preppy prepper is like someone who wears a polo shirt, but also is like building a bomb shelter. I'm the preppy prepper.
Yeah, I've
got a bomb shelter full of Ralph Lauren shirts, just in case,
every color.
Yeah, because once the bomb comes, I got to make sure I look good.
Yeah, exactly. I got to make sure I can wear two polo shirts and pop the collar on.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the kind of guys that they look like, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
And then they're also doing, music that's kind of based on, like I think Paul Simon's Graceland period.
Yeah.
It's no question,
for
right?
Sure,
but even Graceland, fantastic album.
Yeah.
Inarguable, a classic album, like a great album.
Absolutely.
But it is also an album that kind of has a troubled political history, right? Yeah. And all about that. That but Paul Simon goes to South Africa and he starts playing with South African musicians during the age of apartheid. But those guys and he helps kind of give those guys Ladysmith like a huge world following.
They still tour,
but and they're great.
And in the States, sorry.
And Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes, like the intro to that. What a great introduction to Ladysmith. Sure. It's fantastic, So he gives them a platform, but this was at a time when there was a cultural boycott on South Africa,
right?
And so a lot of people felt like that he was kind of coming and being kind of a cultural like colonialist, who'd like show up. take all this amazing music that's being made in South Africa when you're supposed to have a cultural boycott going on to end apartheid, and then take this music out and make millions of dollars off of it, right?
Yeah.
So even though Graceland's a great album, there were still people to this day who I think you can't argue that it's not a great album. It is a great album, no question. And I also think you can't argue that Paul Simon, his heart was in the wrong place. It was definitely in the right place.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Yeah.
And I think that's true about Vampire Weekend too, but I would say that the first time I listened to, it's not really apparent in Oxford Comma, but once you start listening to A-Punk and some of the other tracks, like suddenly those same questions came up again. Okay, are these like white kids from, like you said, upstate New York, like rich kids just sort of exploiting, South African music?
Yeah.
And the more you listen to it, the more you get to know them, I think that's probably that's not really a fair thing to say.
And I think that the reason why that's not a fair thing to say is because you would expect rich kids from upstate New York to be making like Dave Matthews Band kind of
that's
shit,
true too.
So I don't think they came to it from a place of sincerity. They came to it from a place of, well, we really love this music. It's not like every single mom and pop was out there slinging Afrobeat, Lagos disco explosion stuff. You know what I'm saying? Right. So I think that gives it some sincerity. Like, this is really interesting music that we want to make. And I think that's the same thing with Paul Simon, how you were saying his heart was in the right place. Like, he just wanted to make good and interesting music. He didn't care about making a ton of money. He just wanted to make good music.
He wasn't going into it thinking about like, well, how can I exploit this scene? And, because that wasn't really, it wasn't like that was selling really big at the time.
Exactly.
He helped raise its profile.
Yeah. Well, and the way that I understand the cultural boycott in South Africa was artists were going and play. There's like a big Sun City. Yeah. Right. And there were like all these artists going and playing Sun City, but like Bruce Springsteen and he did like a kind of We Are the World thing that was, we're not playing Sun City, because
that was like the white privilege
exactly
kind of area.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and that was the other point, is that Paul Simon was working with the black musicians, the people, the victims of apartheid.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But the argument was, and I don't want to I'm not saying that I even side with this. I love Paul Simon, right? And I love Graceland. But the argument was, okay, well, he may not be breaking the cultural boycott, but is he doing the same thing by kind of coming in as a white musician from the United States and saying, okay, kind of vacuuming up all these artists and being like, hey, I don't, this is really unfair to Paul Simon, but this is the argument, like, I don't really have any ideas, but you guys have a lot of ideas. Let me go to where you are, take your ideas, say they're my ideas, and make millions of dollars with a huge international hit, and then leave you guys living in apartheid and peace out. I paid a bunch of session musicians to essentially produce their record for me. Yeah. And that was, I think, what people were concerned about.
Yeah. And I can see that. That makes sense.
But how it's relevant here is that, like Vampire, when I first really listened to that first Vampire Weekend album, it was like all those questions come back again. It's like, are we listening to, exploitative white guy music,
Right.
But I think you made a good case, though, that it's not really the case. And what's interesting is by the time you get to modern vampires, I think they've kind of moved away from that sound enough that they still are kind of culture vultures, and they go around and kind of bring in stuff from other. In fact, we should talk about some of the tracks, like Step, for instance.
Yes.
This is a fantastic one of my favorites, and I think one that you really identified with, right? Like,
right away, man. Right away. I identified with this song. I felt like it was like, I remember texting you and saying, it's like the Beatles wrote a rap song.
Yeah,
when I heard it.
Let's hear a little bit of it.
Let's do it.
Every time I see you in the world, you always step to my girl.
And that
sort of harpsichord sound or whatever.
So
like it's
amazing.
sort of reference. It sounds like the Left Bank or something. Almost Baroque, what they used to call Baroque
pop. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
but with a kind of vibe that's very, especially once they start singing, very rooted in hip hop.
Absolutely. And the drums. Do you hear the drums?
Yeah.
Very hip hop oriented drums.
Great harmonies and stuff too.
Yeah.
I love this series of digressions here too, where he goes, actually Oakland, not Alameda.
Yeah.
Your girl's in Berkeley. So it's sort of moving around
exactly. Yeah.
Northern California.
Yep.
A fantastic song, one of the highlights of the album. The whole album is highlights. Like there's not a song on this that I don't like.
Yeah,
like agreed. I like every single track, but Step is a really great one.
Right. So Step is that song. I was actually not surprised to hear when I was researching this album. One of the things that stuck out to me about the research was this song was based on a Souls of Mischief song called "Step to My Girl." Let's hear a little bit of that song.
Yeah.
Cool with that? Okay.
Absolutely.
I found mine, so find your own companionship. Every time I see you in the world, you always step to my girl.
So that's a KRS-One sample, yeah.
And that chord progression is the Step chord progression. So
Right.
you could almost argue that this is a cover, although obviously they rewrote lyrics.
So on Who Sampled, the website that you can find out who sampled stuff. So when you look this song up, it actually says Vampire Weekend Step sampled Souls of Mischief Step to My Girl.
Yeah.
So technically that's when in a good way. Like I think it's completely. I think they had full license to do what they do. It doesn't sound like a ripoff. I don't think.
No, I don't think so either.
At all. It just sounds like a very interesting take on the idea of this song, which is really interesting. But the Souls of Mischief, if you don't know a lot about them, they are a Bay Area. Kind of a legendary Bay Area hip hop group that had a very, very big song in the 90s called 93 to Infinity. That song was kind of everywhere. I want to say like 1992, 1993 maybe. But yeah, that was a really, really big song. They had an album of the same name that was a big album. They didn't do a ton of stuff after that, but that song is actually not on a Souls of Mischief album. That is on a Hieroglyphics compilation album. And if you don't know anything about the Hieroglyphics, that is like a Bay Area hip hop collective that Del the Funky Homo Sapien is part of. Another rapper named Casual is part of as well. So they have a couple of comps that are just kind of all of them on different songs, and that was like a Hieroglyphics oldies, I think, was what that song was from.
So they were obviously familiar with all of that. And it's interesting that if there was a Bay Area thing, because they were referencing
they were talking
the
about
Bay
Oakland
Area.
and Alameda and Bakersfield.
And I mean, the track seems to be about kind of defending the music that you love, right? You know, so all of it, like Step to My Girl in the case of the Vampire Weekend album is talking about, you know, stepping to my music, like, you know, insulting the music that I love. And he kind of goes through and makes a pretty good defense of Vampire Weekend, actually, I think.
For sure. I agree. And the actual source material was the song about how, like, you know, I'm out with my girlfriend and, you know, all these guys are trying to basically, like, you know, holler at her or whatever. And it's like, step off, like, you know, that kind of thing. And it's interesting, kind of, because that song kind of, I think, even has some resilience today with everything that's going on. I mean, there's a lot of hints at like violence and stuff in that song that are kind of gangster rap-ish and, you know, that kind of thing. But I think the idea is very much in tune with kind of almost like the Me Too movement in a little bit, as weird as that sounds, just because, I mean, maybe not from a male point, like maybe from a male point of view, like, you know, hey, back off. Like, and I mean, I think that it's a little troublesome because I think the whole like step off of my girl is very masculine.
Paternal and
and you know, that might not be the best thing, but because I don't know if the root of that is like respect women or don't try and fuck my girlfriend. You know? Like, so there's a little dichotomy there that might not be you know, fleshed out as much as.
But I think it's more abstract when it gets to Vampire Weekend.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
they're talking about something way different. And they're using that as a metaphor to talk about, you know, like what you said. Like,
I love the just the poetry across this album. Like a set of lyrics and everything are. Let's talk about it kind of thematically on the whole record. So the record is. I was thinking, you know, there are albums that are like, there's a perfect age for this album, right? Like Nevermind by Nirvana is like the perfect age if you're 15 and your dad's divorcing your mom, right? You know, like that's like, you know, that's the time to listen to that record. I listen to it today and I still like it and respect it, but it's not, you know, it's not like speaking to me like it did when I was 15 and I heard it, right? This strikes me, and so there's other albums, you know, like you probably shouldn't listen to the Wiggles if you're over 7 or whatever, you know, but, you know, there's, depending on what you're into. But, you know, this seems like I'm 29. Like this should be like, this is, I'm 29, I'm about to turn 30. This is an album about kind of about multiple things, but it's a lot about anxiety. And it's weird that I was saying about a lot of my more recent favorite albums address anxiety to some way. And I don't know what that says about me, but one of the big anxieties on this album is aging.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
it's about kind of aging out of the scene that you're in.
Yeah.
Growing up and leaving your friends behind a little bit.
Yeah.
I saw where Ezra Koenig, the guy who actually
Ezra Koenig.
Yeah, Ezra We'll have to.
Yeah, we'll come back to
We'll
that.
come back to how to pronounce my man's name, but Ezra Koenig is the correct way. But Ezra Koenig said that if you see this as the third part of a Bildungsroman with the first two albums, that I wouldn't have a problem with that. And that tells you all like what's great about him as a writer and what's terrible about him as a writer at the exact same time. Speaking as a guy with an English, so a Bildungsroman is a type of, and it's just, I've got an English degree, so let me draw on my English degree. It's a coming of age story. It's a way to say, this is like the third part of a Brideshead Revisited style coming of age story where someone sort of ages out of the world that they used to live in. So, and in fact, I take it as read because this album came out in 2013. Still no follow up. It's supposed to come out sometime soon, but it almost feels like, if he completed it then, he really did kind of complete where he was going. And maybe, I don't want to speak for it, but maybe figuring out where you go from here has been what they've dealt with since. I don't know.
Right.
But so if you take it as a Bildungsroman, then this is the final chapter. This is the part where you start to confront things like aging.
Sure.
And this particular album has this particular song has one of the most famous lines from the whole record. Wisdom's a gift, but you trade it for youth. Age is an honor. It's still not the truth. And honestly, like
that's really, really wow.
Yeah, it's about sort of dealing with, but it's tricky because that's kind of a pro-youth line, really. But the fact that they're kind of confronting the idea of getting too old, even the idea of modern vampires, right? Like you're sort of an unaging person, like an aging scenester, too old to really fit in. Almost like a Twilight thing where you got a 500-year-old vampire, biting the neck of an 18-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Like I think that's actually part of the themes of this record. So we're going to come back to that multiple times, but that is something that they're definitely talking about aging.
Yeah. And I think that, being in that New York scene, there's a lot of that is, I'm sure, driven by not youth culture, but culture of people that are in their like early 20s, and I think you would feel old at like your mid 20s in a scene like the New York scene, just because everything moves so fast. And like, a year, like if you're making music one year, a year later, everything's totally different. And there's brand new people making music and influencing each other. And I feel like they were right. I'm not, okay, I don't want to say they were right to feel, but like it makes sense that they were anxious about that. And it makes sense that a lot of that was fodder for this album because, there's this kind of different, interesting, quirky New York band. But like, Oxford Comma and A-Punk don't really make sense in the world anymore. It's like, how do we confront that? How do we deal with that? And how do we deal with also getting older and trying to make sense of a scene that, doesn't make sense to us anymore. You know what I'm saying?
It's weird how quickly you can go from being like the new thing to like a seminal band. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, and I think, although it probably by 2013, it was probably a little early to call Vampire Weekend a seminal band, but they would have been around for, 5 years at this point. So they would have, that's
2008, right?
Yeah, 2008, I think is the first one. So, and they went fast with those first two records. You know what I mean? So, I imagine that would have been, but to cycle back, so if it was just about Vampire Weekend and their feelings, then who cares, right? But I think what's great is that they do a great job of sort of poetically discussing it so it's kind of universal, and you, like I said, so I think if you're like 29 years old, if you're listening to this and you're 29 and you're not used to hearing and you're sort of feeling anxiety about turning 30, or, it's kind of, maybe it's appropriate that we're right in that period where you just turned 39, I'm about to turn 40. Right. It's not the same feeling it now as I'm approaching 40, because I'm been out of rock scenes for long enough now that I don't care. But I do feel like, it is a time I am reflecting on getting older a little bit. You know what I mean? Just because it's happening. So, So I find that really resonant even now.
Yeah, I find it.
Another line here: the gloves are off, the wisdom teeth are out. What you on about? I feel it in my bones. I'm stronger now. I'm ready for the house.
Yeah.
Such a modest mouse.
Yeah.
It's sort of, again, ready for a house. Like even the idea to decide to get a house is suddenly like a life change. It is a life changing decision, but it's like
it makes sense now. Whereas I could be sleeping on somebody's floor and while I'm on tour. And it's fine, and like I can get that lifestyle makes sense to me. But now it doesn't. Now I want to,
This is almost a sad story, but I'll go ahead and tell it anyway. Like around this age, when I was about 29, I was married. I was in a rented house. I hadn't bought a house yet, but I had a household and a life and everything. We were talking about having kids and all that. And I had a friend who was pretty reckless with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And he started calling me like in the middle of the night and stuff, and he wanted to move in with me.
Right.
And he didn't understand that like I had sort of transitioned to another phase of my life where I couldn't just let him come and sleep on my floor for a month. And it actually broke up that friendship. So it's funny, on the one hand, I tell a story about a friendship that was actually, good, but around the same time, another friendship ended. And that age is a weird transitionary age because there are a lot of people who, and I'm not judging it, but I'm saying that you just end up in different places in your life where people are, they want to be 21 forever and that's their choice, but then other people who are like already trying to be 55 or something, and you're maybe in the middle somewhere making that transition, and not everybody gets the memo or understands that. And I feel like this album, one of the themes it deals with is that, is figuring that out.
Right. Well, for sure. And I think for me, I feel like this now almost in my 40s, how they felt in their 30s. And that might have something to do with me being like a late bloomer. But, when I was in my late 20s, I realized I needed a big change in my life, and I moved here to Austin. And I think that being 30 and going through my 30s was overshadowed with all of these new experiences and all of these, new friends I was making and new things I was doing because I was living in a completely different place, and I was building a life for myself. So the kind of heavy lifting that I had to do there really kind of took away from the fact that I was getting older, right? And by the time I didn't realize that I was getting older until I was probably 36 or 37, because I was like 33, not old. 34, no, not old. 35, 35, oh man, wow. 36, 37, ooh, I'm getting up there. So now I feel like I'm going through that more, and I'm kind of questioning like, okay, I'm almost 40, this is, a big kind of crossroads. And I don't feel this old, and, then again, like it's all relative,
And also everybody's different. I don't want to sound like, there's a place you need to be at 29 or anything like that. It's just that these transitions, when they come, like usually come with the kind of questions that Vampire Weekend is asking.
Absolutely.
Here. And what's interesting is that they talk too about, like, Diane Young is a great example of another thing that's about youth. Let's play a little bit of Diane Young and let's talk about the themes of that. So one of the things too about Vampire Weekend is they're very sort of like F. Scott Fitzgerald put to music, where there's like they describe a lot of like wild and crazy life, but also with a certain level of criticism or like where they don't fit 100% comfortably in that world.
Right.
And I think Diane Young, we were talking about it a little bit ago, that it's like it's this incredibly poppy song. Like listen to this, it's so like immediate, like you just get it right away. But it's so great, But if you look at the lyrics are really strong, like even that right there. Okay, so it's a criticism of that YOLO kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where he's saying like. So he describes someone like the first line, you torch a sob like a pile of leaves, like living fast, go hard, die young, Diane Young, obviously a very obvious pun, dying young, a song about dying young. My favorite lines from this, he actually starts referencing Chappaquiddick of all things. Where he's like, Irish and proud, baby, naturally, but you've got the luck of a Kennedy. So grab the wheel, keep holding it tight till you're tottering off into that good night. If dying young won't change your mind, baby, right on time. Essentially, like if you're going to live fast and die hard and crash your car and burn yourself up and die, or be reckless and kill somebody, like in this case, it's like you sort of you're sort of living the life that you're asking to live. If you die young, I'm not saying you asked for it, but it's sort of like you make a choice, you're going to grow up or not.
Yeah.
And he's sort of, it's not so much like he's condemning that. In fact, he's kind of like funny about it.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
He's sort of like, hey, if dying young won't change your mind, then baby, right on time. Like
well, and I think that song is a very astute observation of the world that we live in, and I think, we were talking about Lord before. I think this song does a good job of making sense and encapsulating all of that madness about youth culture and about how maybe I don't really understand it, but it is what it is, So
I love too. It's got another about aging. One of the funniest lines where he's like, "Nobody knows what the future holds. It's bad enough just getting old."
I think that's my favorite lyric in the whole album.
Yeah,
I identify so much with those bars, man. Like. And the way he delivers is bad enough. Just get it on. Like, it sounds so good, man. It's so present.
Like, he kicks it up a notch, a register on that too,
Because some days I really feel like that. Some days I'm like, getting old sucks. You know? Like, it is bad enough just getting old. And like, I think you can come to that from a place where, this guy's bitching about getting old. Like, there's poor people out there.
It doesn't sound like a glory days or something like where he's just saying, "Oh, I'm getting old, but I'm looking back." Or even when he says, "I love the past because I hate suspense."
Yeah,
like that's a funny line, but it's not trying to live in the past, really. It's sort of saying like part of living in the future is sort of recognizing that you have to make a transition at a certain point. And I think that's
grow as a person.
And I think that's where Diane Young is a kind of criticism of staying in your 20s forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Without criticizing your being in your 20s when you are in your 20s. Right. You know what I mean? I think that's maybe more to the point. So that theme is going to pop up multiple times, but there's another big theme that really resonates with me. And talking about anxiety again, like this is a post 9/11 album, even though it is several years. I mean, over a decade later. One of the big themes of it, and I think is one of the best ones. It's been very hard. So if you're younger, you've lived with 9/11 your whole life. You know what I mean? And I know that we're getting farther enough away that listening to some guy talk about the importance of 9/11 is probably the most thing you don't want to have to relive right now. But the world did kind of change after that. And for those of us who remember what it was like before and then seeing the level of anxieties and stuff and the way that those anxieties turned into political action, and all sorts of strange stuff, like it's, and the degree to which religion plays into political realities. It has been very shocking and it has been a source of anxiety, I think, for a lot of people. This album goes hard against... not against, but it talks a lot about the nature of God and the way God is used to hurt people, and how that's just a shame, I guess. Really,
for lack of a better, I'd say so. And what was the song that where they reference Israelites?
It's in Fingerback, right?
Fingerback.
Let me. You want to go to that?
We'll see if we can
find that reference. So the Israelites, of course, has been a running joke for some reason. I don't know how it happened, but it's like if the thing goes too long, we have
to. About house, whatever. But
the Israelites is our kind of alarm clock song. Like if we're just going too long. So I'd been thinking about the Israelites, and I remembered that there was a reference to it here, and that's what got me thinking about this album. And I started listening to it again, and I was like, oh, I'm really into it. But it's also got there's a lot of songs in here like Worship You and stuff where they've got like this crazy they're really fast. Like they're coming at you super fast.
Yeah, they almost have like punk energy in a way. Sure, Like that kind of almost like a blast.
Yeah, I'd say blast beat almost. It's not quite, but it's getting
it's similar.
Close to it.
Yeah.
And this song is great. He almost seems to be talking about like being tortured and stuff by religious people. You know what I mean? For being wrong, essentially being tortured. This is beautiful. So he mentions Jerusalem, but it's a falafel shop.
Yeah.
Because this Orthodox girl fell in love with the guy at the falafel shop. And
why not?
Should she have averted her eyes and just stared at the laminated poster of the Dome of the Rock?
And then blood, and blood. Yeah. So that's a real place.
Yeah.
There's apparently a falafel shop at the corner of whatever it is he says. And we were talking about this, texting back and forth about it. Like you asked me, what do you think about it? Did you think I would think it was too on the nose or something? Or what did you think? Like,
no, I thought it was perfect. Well, the one thing, how he says, should she just
I think I grabbed the wrong one. We were talking about the Israelites.
Yeah, we were, but we can talk. This one's a good one to talk about too. But yeah, when he says, should she just averted her eyes and look the poster of the Dome of the Rock? That's something significant. The Dome of the Rock, is that some kind of? I feel like that is
in Jerusalem.
A reference. So
and this goes back to like the poetry
the
of this
Wall
album
or something. Maybe?
Yeah, I don't think the Wailing Wall is right there, but it is like the it's like the one of the most. I'll explain that in a second.
Yeah, sorry.
So no, it's all good. The going to that little section right there, he basically, let's go back to the poetry of like Vampire of the Weekend, right?
Right.
Like there's a really like big idea in this, what sounds like a very simple story, and it's almost like a short story. He says, he basically describes, he first says it kind of happens in Jerusalem, and you think, oh, it's Jerusalem, of course, the city, and it's like, the one on the falafel shop called Jerusalem, so it's a little trick, but then it's also, it's not an accident, it's sort of hinting that there's a religious significance to what we're about to talk about, right? And then he describes a Jewish girl falling in love with a guy at the falafel shop. Falafel shop is associated with Arabs. It's associated with Islam. And so the idea is like maybe she would fall in love with this guy, but there's something keeping them apart.
There's an undercurrent there that says they can't really be together.
Exactly. And he said instead you should stare at the laminated poster of the Dome of the Rock, which is there. I found online a picture of it. Yeah, he's not even making that up.
If we ever go to New York, we've
got to go there, man.
Sure.
But there's a laminated poster of the Dome of the Rock, and so in other words, like there's this thing. It's God. God will keep them apart forever, right? And it goes back to something in Unbelievers where they say, and there's a great line where he's like, if I'm born again, I know that the world will disagree. And he's basically talking about like if I one little grace, but who's going to say a little grace for me? We know the fire awaits unbelievers, all of the sinners the
saints. All the sinners the same?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, girl, you and I
the same.
They're all the same. Girl, you and I will die unbelievers bound to the tracks of a train. It's like chilling, but it's essentially saying that no matter what your perspective is, the other half of the world doesn't believe what you believe. Are they all supposed to die? Are they all supposed to be, and not just die, but like be essentially murdered, right? And so it goes back multiple times to this theme, and that's where I think of it as a post 9/11 thing, where it's like the religion, instead of bringing us together, instead of saying a little grace for me, religion is pulling people apart from each other. Here are two people who could maybe love each other, but they can't even, they've got to look at the Dome of the Rock and think about God instead of making a human connection.
Looking into each other's eyes,
Right.
I think the overarching concept of a lot of these songs, especially what we just examined there, and if anyone is religious that is listening to this, I have nothing against, religion, or whatever you believe in. That's your choice. As personal, that's up to you. So if I'm talking out of turn here, please forgive me. But I think that an overarching theme of this album is how religion doesn't make a lot of sense in modern society. And this is an example of that. This is an example of two people that could have had a connection, but their faiths kept them from doing that. Does that make sense?
I think that's a part of it, but I don't think the theme is God is irrelevant, because later when he gets around to Yahweh. So he toward the end of the album, he presents two ideas of God. Worship you sort of gives you the God is he references Milton's God with the red right hand. Essentially the murderous God, or where it's repeating blood here. Essentially that this is a God that's there to kill unbelievers. That he says is completely irrelevant. That is But then, so you think, okay, well, that's a very sort of common secular view, you know, like if you don't believe in any God, then of course you think it's irrelevant and useless. Right. But then he does a sympathetic thing in Yahweh. Yahweh, of course, sounds like Yahweh. I don't think that's an accident. It's Hey Yah backwards too. So again, another reference to hip hop, you know, Outkast. Yeah. But I don't know if Hey Yah really. I mean, the thing about Hey Yah, that's very famously a song about like relationships that don't work out, right? And so there's a little bit about Yahweh being a bit of a relationships not working out with God kind of thing. I think maybe. That's the only connection that I can really see. Otherwise, it's just a pun for the sake of it. You know? But he goes into. He starts off, "Oh, sweet thing, Zion doesn't love you, and Babylon don't love you, but you love everything." And he's singing to God. I think it's pretty clear because he later says, you know, you can't even say your name. You say, "I am that I am," which is a reference to the Hebraic God. I think it's, in fact, let's hear a little bit of Yahweh, just because I want to give some context to this. I think it's a beautiful song.
Agreed.
And this has the reference to the Israelites. So we'll skip ahead to
at the end. It does.
In Babylon. So Zion, of course, the holy city. Jerusalem, Israel. Babylon in Iraq, associated, I think, with two things. Certainly in Christian religion, Babylon's always associated with the Babylonian captivity. And it's basically depraved society too. So I think Babylon also speaks a little bit toward, conceptions of the modern world or whatever, right? So the modern world doesn't love God. The Zion doesn't, the Israelites, Islam, he says America doesn't love you. I think that's bringing Christianity in. So essentially all the major religions don't perceive God the way Ezra Koenig seems to think that he probably really is.
It should be.
It should. So it doesn't reject God entirely, but it does sort of say that our conceptions of God have drifted toward the red right hand, to the God that demands worship, that demands blood, essentially.
Well, and I wasn't trying to say that this was like anti-Christian or anything.
No,
that.
I didn't take it that way.
I was trying to say that I think that he's examining the complexities and the gray area and how people interpret religion in our society, and I think you made a lot of good points that really back that up, right? Where there's this, vengeful God that demands blood and demands you believe or else, or you're going
you're
to
throwing
hell.
On the train.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I think that what I was trying to say, the overarching theme was basically trying to make sense of that gray area when it comes to, belief and faith.
Right.
And I think that this album does a really, really good job of examining that. And I think
I think you've said it very well. Yeah.
So
he does get to the point here where he talks about he sees you spinning Israelites into 19th nervous breakdown, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really clever way to talk about the difference between the God is, I think he maybe would like to believe in, maybe the Israelites, which is a very positive, depiction of the Israelites, and maybe the idea of, the historical Jews, and then turning into 19th Nervous Breakdown, a famous Rolling Stones song. That basically, essentially, our perceptions of God are like 19th Nervous Breakdown instead. It's like the history of religion, as a DJ set between, like he's moving from the Israelites
to 19th Nervous Breakdown. It's making this dramatic hard cut, this dramatic shift. Yeah,
exactly.
For sure. Yeah.
So let's hear that.
Outside the tents, on the festival grounds, as the air began to cool and the sun went down.
Again, almost like another little short story.
Yeah.
So I'm a sucker for that kind of thing.
Me too.
Of you spinning Israelites into 19th nervous breakdown.
I like the little piano part.
Yeah, me too.
There's a lot of little tasty piano pieces and stuff on this album that are really great. And there's that high-pitched ludicrous thing again.
Yeah.
Thunder. I like it on this, though. I don't care if it sounds like some Smurfs singing.
I like it, too.
I
think it's interesting.
Yeah, so So pretty awesome. I first heard this album probably, I don't know if it was 2013, maybe 2014 that I heard it.
Yeah.
And it was one that I just kind of fell for right away. I also love the way, like there's a track on here called Don't Lie. They use an organ a lot, Everlasting Arms. Like you can kind of hear that right away.
Oh my God.
Hear that.
I love that bass line too.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's so good. So when I listened to this album the first time, I kind of instantly became obsessed with it. And I think I listened to it like 3 or 4 times the first day when you told me you wanted to do it. And I was doing this research and I was talking about it. And I was talking about it a lot with Courtney. One brief aside, she saw them do an ACL taping, Austin City Limits television show taping during South by Southwest when they were touring on this album.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things she said was that Diane Young, the voice modulation parts, they actually did that live.
Yeah,
and
I saw a performance.
It was really cool. Yeah.
A video performance of them doing that, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, it's really, really wild. Yeah, I think that as a Saturday Night Live one that I might have.
Oh, I think that was the one I saw.
Yeah, and it was really, really interesting. But I really got obsessed with this album, and I was talking about it with Courtney a lot. And we were driving to the brewery yesterday where I had my birthday party, and we were listening actually to Neutral Milk Hotel in the airplane over the sea, and because I don't think she had heard that album before, and
wow,
and she was like, this sounds like the Decemberists were really influenced by this album. And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like the Decemberists couldn't have happened without this album at all. you know, like, but anyway, I was like, yeah. And these songs are in the major key, kind of like the Vampire Weekend album that we're doing. Like, she's like, you got to stop talking about that album. And I was like, I'm doing a podcast on it. Like, I got to research it, man. And like, I think it just kind of really, cornerstoned the idea that I was like becoming obsessed with it, because I was watching the clips on YouTube. I watched like a clip of the ACL taping where they did Unbelievers, which is really good, and also the SNL. And
I just love it because when we get around to talk about your album, you can imagine what my experience has been like listening to your album.
Oh yeah.
But we'll get into that.
We'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, man, it's really. It's really struck me as a really interesting piece of music almost right away. And like, I was expecting to hear something like, Contra or their first album. And I hadn't heard Contra, their second album, before doing the research. And I feel like there are traces of this album on Contra for sure. Like they're kind of starting to go in that direction on a few of those songs. So
I'm not as familiar with Contra. I know like White Sky, and I know a couple of, and I have listened to the whole album before. But I guess, and maybe I need to listen to it a little harder because I didn't listen to it within the context of this album. And I definitely felt when it came out, like, oh, it's kind of more of that, like
there's a song on that album that's kind of like reminds me of Everlasting Light a little, or Everlasting Arms. Yeah, excuse me. No, a little bit. So that kind of made me think, oh, okay, maybe they were starting to go in this direction a little bit. But the lyrics and the songwriting were certainly not as profound as they were on Modern Vampires. Yeah, for sure. So
I like where it ends up too. It sort of stops with Hudson. Like once he sort of comes to the conclusion that, I think he basically says, like there's some beauty in the concept of God, but he walks away from it because it's just not something that is compatible anymore with his life.
Exactly.
And so then immediately he tells the story of Hudson, like in the song Hudson, which I think is really, really amazing. Yeah. And if you do think of it as like a 3-part story or whatever, it sort of ends with a mutiny. And it kind of that's it. It's over. It's Hudson. He tells the story of being essentially sent off to die in sea. He says, "You can wrap me in the flag," which is very clearly a reference to death. Yeah. And then "Young Lion" is the final track, which is nice, but it's just a kind of almost an echo of the young person that's been left behind. Right. And I for sure. I just find it incredibly moving where it ends up. I don't think it's like a conceptual album in the sense of like, oh, it's all, he's telling a narrative from beginning to end. But I do think it does take you kind of on a journey, and it does end in a different place than it starts.
Absolutely. So I would agree with that.
Yeah. So that's pretty much most of what I say. Check that album out. It's a beautiful album. If you think you know Vampire Weekend, but you haven't heard this third album, I think it is really to your benefit to check it out, because this is the album that they were that they were destined to make.
It was definitely their third album in a lot of ways. Like, they were putting traces. They were putting traces of what would be on this album on their first two albums, but this is like, it is their sound fully realized, but I think it's also them, their actual personalities being fully realized too, with, how they're trying to adapt to getting older and dealing with religion and dealing with some of the tongue-in-cheek we all go through, and I think Ezra really through his songwriting, he really kind of distills that in a very emotive and human way. Which I really like. I mean, so
I also think that like a lot of that tongue-in-cheek funny stuff, like, who gives a fuck about an Oxford comma, like that kind of stuff is sort of serving bigger themes now. Whereas before it was maybe just more for fun. Now they're writing, like we were talking about Diane Young and stuff like that. Even the pun of Diane Young, it's like, it's a funny tongue-in-cheek thing, but it serves a greater purpose than just being a silly pop song. I think that's something that is a good use of his. We should talk about, since we tipped it off earlier about how to say his name. I sent you. So we live in.
Play it?
Yeah. So we're in Austin. So there's a street, Koenig Street, right? Yeah. So when we see Koenig, we think Koenig, right? Yeah. That's how it's pronounced. But I wanted to double check and make sure we were saying it right, and it is Koenig. He said that it sounds kind of like Go Knicks. But when I was looking for how, he said that was tough growing up in Boston with a name that sounds like Go Knicks.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Celtics fans probably didn't go for that too much. But so we were looking, I was just double checking that I was pronouncing it right.
Yeah.
And this is what I said to Marty.
This is what Chris came across when it came to how to pronounce his name.
Ezra Koenig. Ezra Koenig.
Koenig.
I got to hear it one more time. Hang on.
Ezra Koenig. Ezra Koenig.
So if you guys think you can get away with calling him Ezra Koenig to his face, then it wasn't because of us.
No, it was not. You can't pin that on us, guys. I'm sorry. You just can't.
So anyway, so great. Check that album out. Let's talk about your album, man.
Okay, so for my album, I was really on the fence about what I wanted to pick for this year. But there is a very interesting album that came out this year, or in 2013, excuse me. It's an album by a band, by a kind of an interesting band. Let's hear a little bit about it before we get into it. Does that sound good, Chris?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool.
Grief, is that heavy or what?
Pretty heavy, man. So my pick for 2013 is an album called Sunbather, and this album is by a band called Deafheaven. And Deafheaven's a very interesting group, very interesting band. This is a very interesting album too. This album kind of manages to combine like black metal and hardcore punk elements and almost grindcore elements to like shoegaze and kind of different kinds of modern rock, even in a weird way. Essentially, we'll probably get into it a little bit more. We'll listen to it a little bit more, but there's very like howled and screamed vocals, but then you'll have like a breakdown that sounds almost like Mogwai or Explosions in the Sky or something like that. And you'll have some really crazy blast beat drumming, but then it transitions into something a little more, kind of serene almost. And I mean, there's a lot of elements on this album. There's piano, there's guitar, there's obviously drums and bass and stuff. But
they do sound collage. They do all kinds
there's a lot of cool sound.
Kind of stretch a little bit.
Sure. So I'm glad I picked this album because I knew Chris had not heard it, and I think it's something he would really have a lot of interesting things to say about it, given his background. And I came across this album around the time it came out, and I saw them when they were touring on this album. They were very, very good live. But yeah, this is a really interesting band, a really interesting album. Kris, what did you think upon first hear?
Well, my experience with this episode, the album cover is pretty memorable, right?
It is very memorable.
So by 2013, I got a lot of my music news from the AV Club, basically. Like I hung out at the AV Club.
Yeah, I was there too.
Yeah, and would check things out. And so it first came on my radar from that, but I don't think I was like reading articles about it. I think I just sort of saw it. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I see that and I thought, oh, it probably sounds like Beach House or something. You know what I mean? Like I thought, oh, it's some probably dream pop crap that I don't want to listen to. So I never, and that's not true. Not to say I never gave it a chance. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I did like hop on Spotify at one point and go like, well, what does this sound? Because that's the kind of thing I do. It's like, here's something that I've already dismissed after looking at the album cover.
Right.
Let's play it. And I think I played about an hour of it or a minute of it, and I was surprised that it was like a black metal album.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, this is not what I thought this was going to sound like.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, well, it's kind of interesting, but this song is 9 more minutes of this or something.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, well, I'll have to. I didn't dismiss it, but I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, this is something I'm going to have to get back around to at some point, right? And then I just never got around to it. And when you said, oh, that album Sunbather came out this year, I think I'm thinking about doing that. I was kind of like intrigued because I was like, okay, well, I've never listened to the whole record, and I don't have an opinion on it.
You said you did actually try and listen to it like when around the time it came out?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had tried. It may have been like a year later. It started showing up on like year-end lists and stuff as like a metal album of the year and stuff like that. And so I gave it a try, more like on a whim. But you know how it is. It's like sometimes you're trying something, you're like, okay, well, that's not what I was expecting to hear. Maybe I'll come back to that. But let's go find something, more what my mood was right now.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that, and I think the album art of this album is something very interesting we can talk about. The cover art was designed by a guy named Nick Steinhardt, who is in a really great band called Touche Amore. He's designed albums for other band. He also designed Deafheaven's first album cover, Roads to Judah.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very beautiful. There's a couple of like mini tour documentaries on YouTube of Deafheaven, and George, the singer, he has a couple of different ways of describing this album cover. In one of the documentaries, he said he had this experience where he actually saw this woman sunbathing, and he was very taken aback with like how comfortable she was with herself, and she did not appear to be like self-conscious, and she did not appear to be like to really care what people thought. He felt like she looked like she was one with the world, and that made a lot of sense to him, seeing this woman just kind of being incredibly present in the world by just laying there, which is really interesting, But
it's kind of a specific like place though, right? Because he saw her, like even in the song Sunbather where he describes this, he talks about driving through the wealthy neighborhood. And after seeing it, he's not just struck by her, and that image to me, like, this album almost lives and dies by that for me. Because it's well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay.
But I mean, it's not just about her feeling like she's has no cares, but also the juxtaposing that with how he felt, very ugly, hardworking, and not privileged in any way.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because they talk about. Came across another interview with George, and he said about how he kind of talked about how he felt with being poor and having to struggle, and how this album, a lot of that comes out on this album.
Right, like it's an interesting thing because I think anytime you sing about a sunbather, there's also sexual imagery in it.
Exactly.
Right? Like you can't, and he doesn't like lean into that. And I think that's good. I think leaving it kind of there as a suggestion rather than because otherwise it's, an incel thing and who cares, right?
Right.
But I still think like it's a great image because he's saying, there was something about her and her life that's appealing, but that goes philosophically beyond just her whatever attraction he may have had to her or anything like that.
Right.
And So we were talking earlier about royals, about the change in culture, and even to some degree about Vampire Weekend and where they came from, and being a part of maybe Ivy League class, but not really being a part of it 100%.
Right.
It almost seems like there's a theme developing in 2013 of inequality.
Sure.
And that this is like the primal screams that I hear on this Sunbather record to me are about that.
Absolutely.
Like that's the thing that I most appealed that I found most appealing.
Absolutely. Well, and it's true because it's not like they're not like singing about like Satan or anything like that, or like killing people. Like a lot of the music of this genre, and don't get me wrong, I do like a lot of metal, but some of it is like very much induced by like shock value and things like that, and imagery, and like kind of like macabre and satanic imagery. And you don't have
black metal too has a lot of like Nordic imagery, like everyone's cosplaying Vikings and crap, and it's like. So this must have to that. If you listen to Celtic Frost or something, this must seem like really like, what are you singing about, a sunbather? You got to talk about trampling down your enemies in the in the Nordic tundra. Come on,
about, like being in the forest and coming across gnomes.
All right. Unless that sunbather's a gnome, we got to have a talk, man. If that's a gnomish sunbather, we're onto something. But the fact that is just sounds like some sunbather.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even the Pink album cover is in a way a kind of middle finger, and that's very metal actually in its own way.
And it was received very well by that community too.
I read that it was controversial, that a lot of the people in that community saw it as, and I don't want to pretend, I was always more punk than metal, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not like a metal guy. I feel like I get it to some degree, but I don't have like every Slayer album on my shelf or something like that, right? Not out of a sign of disrespect or anything, but metal. We were talking, and we've talked multiple times about how when you were younger, you kind of had to pick a lane, and then as you got older, you kind of felt like you could open up. But metal probably. Maybe some country music, but I would say metal is probably the genre that you pick that lane, you stay in that lane, right?
Yeah, like you're a metalhead. Like, being into heavy metal is very identity driven, and I think for punk too.
I think so, but a lot of punks eventually opened up.
That's
right?
true.
Whereas I think a lot of metal guys stayed metal. I mean, I don't even mean that as an insult. I think it's like they were sort of found what they were looking for there, Right. And so it always made it kind of hard for me to feel like I could penetrate into that. You know what I mean? It was, I'm not going to spend all my time listening to songs about, the devil, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. No, seriously.
But I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it wasn't my world.
Yeah.
So I guess I found it very interesting to see an album that is so concept driven like this coming from black metal, which I just kind of, I said, I just kind of associate with Halloween or something.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I was just, while you were talking, I was pulling some stuff up on my iPad, and Metal Injection, which is a pretty renowned heavy metal website, they gave this album a 9 out of 10.
Good.
Yeah.
But I was reading customer reviews, and there was a lot of stuff where they were calling it like
on Amazon?
Well, no, not. I mean, I was on Rate Your Music.
Rate Your Music,
and I was checking so people were rating it, and there was a lot of talk. Like even the people who were defending the album and saying like this is one of my favorite metal albums. They're like, I know it's not cult, where they spell CVLT, cult.
Mm-hmm.
Like the cultists don't like it. I know it's often dismissed as hipster metal, and there's a and I can imagine that if you were somebody who was really into, because there are a lot of post rock things in this.
And for sure.
You know what I mean? I could see how it maybe looks a little compromised from the point of view of someone who's got very specific tastes in metal.
Death to false metal kind of thing. Right. But the thing is I feel like they're taking black metal and that kind of thing, and they're just stretching it out to see how far it could go.
Yeah,
I don't feel like they're trying to make a metal album that's not a metal album. I don't think they're trying to alienate people. Right. I think you're right though. I think they probably did alienate some people with this. What the fuck? There's a Pink album cover and it looks like a Beach House album and
piano parts and stuff. Yeah, and, not that that's completely unheard of in metal, but I mean it's not a conventional metal album.
Yeah, and I think the time kind of it was the right time for something like this to happen. Because when you said hipster metal a minute ago, I mean, in like 2008, 2009, 2010, that stuff like Baroness and Kylissa and even Mastodon. And there were a lot of those bands that were very musical, you know, that were metal bands, and they had a very serious edge to them. And it was a lot of attitude there, but they could also play, you know, they were also like very complex and very good musicians. Like the musicianship on a lot of that stuff was high. And I think that's why a lot of people branded it hipster metal, because it's not just like Slayer or something. Well, and the Slayer, those guys are good musicians too. But
I think, I generally think of metal musicians as being pretty good musicians. You know what I mean? Like,
that's true.
You know, you go back to like Megadeth, or it's like it's one of those things you can't take away from metal guys mostly.
Right. They're all really good players.
Yeah, they're
guitar players anyway.
Guitar players, yeah. And usually the drummers have to be really good in a metal band too.
That's
and in fact, oh my gosh, is that true in this album? This album?
Yeah.
Like that guy, you know. I sent you a text, I think, the first time I was listening to it.
Like, they had to take these people. Go ahead.
I was like, I noticed that they've got some slow sections. And it's like they had to take a break so the drummer's heart doesn't explode.
Yeah, man. Because when he's doing like that double bass stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
but I mean, it's just brutal. And he's doing it for a long time period a lot of times too, you know. And it's.
Let me see if I can bring something up here, because I think Dreamhouse. Let me see.
Yeah.
Listen to this for a second.
Dreamhouse is so good. Yeah. There's also some chords in this that don't strike me as like metal chords.
Yeah, for sure.
They almost sound like it could be Beatles or Radiohead or something. You know.
Well, the George, the guitar player, he loves like Oasis and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I saw his What's in the Bag.
Yeah.
He's like got Morrissey albums and stuff, and you can tell that.
Yeah, so listen.
Yeah, and it's just relentless. But that must have sounded incredible live when you saw it. I would love to see
it. Sounded so good live.
How it works. You know?
I think they're touring, and if they come, we should go if they come anywhere.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of like, and that's almost kind of like D-beat grindcore kind of drumming. If you've ever know about anything about that kind of stuff, that stuff
I'm not really in.
I'm not either. It's kind of inaccessible. Some of it's kind of cool, but for the most part, it's very much like noise, like a lot of noise, and like it's kind of stuff that like is completely just inaccessible live. But on the record, it sounds okay. And forgive me, any D-beat or grindcore fans that are listening to this.
Oh yeah,
I know a couple of them, and I please don't bite my head off for this. And
misunderstanding it.
Think that I'm
this is not grindcore.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of gatekeeping in metal communities, right? Where
there is.
You know, there's so many different subgenres, and it's like, well, this thing doesn't qualify because the lyrics aren't about this, or the guy sings too much, or whatever, you know. And it's like, it's almost like EDM, you know, where like there's always like a new version. You slap the word core on something, and it's a new genre.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
For sure.
But the thing is I don't mean that to be dismissive, like, but it's just, I think you have to be so into that community to even really understand the distinctions between these things, because there's subtle differences.
Sure.
I mean, when I think of double kick drum, I mean, that's just pretty much all metal, you know, certainly, you know, they just use that. Like Wilco has even wrote a song where they're
heavy metal drummer,
you know, which is great.
So that reminded me of something.
Go for it.
It was the second time I saw Wilco. I had to leave during that song. Not by my choice, but the girl I was with at the time, her feet hurt and she wanted to go. I was like, but it's heavy metal drummer. Like
that'd be so fun.
It was great. It was amazing. And it was an outdoor show. And yeah, Cincinnati has a festival, I think every year, or maybe like every 2 years, called Tall Stacks. And it kind of commemorates like the riverboats and the steamboats that were big, like, you know, a while ago, and they have bands play, and Wilco headlined it this particular year, and they were amazing. But yeah, like heavy metal drummer, she just couldn't do
walk
it.
Out like that's too. I mean,
her feet. I get it. Like it sucks to be uncomfortable at a show and be outdoors, but like we could have gone and like sat down somewhere. You know, I'd have been fine with that as long as I could still see the show.
I mentioned seeing Weezer on the Pinkerton tour, which was a pretty cool show, and it was in it was in Liberty Lunch here, which is a notorious cool club and everything, or venue that was pretty small.
Yeah.
But I went with a girlfriend who didn't really know Weezer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she was pretty conservative, and they started off with "Tired of Sex." Oh, big mistake for me, Weezer.
Yeah.
You wrecked it for me because it was like she's like, okay, I'm going to go with my boyfriend to this Weezer show. Maybe I'll like it. I like the Buddy Holly song, and then so then they're playing. I'm tired of having sex or whatever.
Yeah.
And, and that's a sort of. There's some context to that. Fine, I'm not going to totally defend it, but come on, like it's not like I took you to see Prince. You know what I mean?
It's not like we're watching Two Live Crew.
Yeah, exactly.
Bikini clad women on the
But
stage.
what happened is she just
anything,
got mad, kind of, and so I spent the whole show like toward the back, like she was
seriously?
like sitting on a chair, like she was just sitting there like kind of pouting.
Is it Liberty Lunch, right?
Yeah, Liberty Lunch. I think if I remember correctly, it's obviously this was over 20 years ago now. But it was like they had a bar to the side, and there were some seats, and nobody was at the bar because the stage is away from that.
Right.
So like I'm sort of watching the Weezer show from like an awful vantage point, but it's just because she was no longer feeling it.
Man, that's crazy.
Oh well.
I never got to go to Liberty Lunch, man. I feel like I missed out on.
You did miss out. That was a really great venue. I can't really think. There's probably venues now that I'm not. You probably went to La Zona Rosa at some point. Did you go?
Yeah.
So
I like La Zona
a
Rosa.
little bit of that vibe at Liberty Lunch. Like it's not
Okay.
too far off from that, but pretty much same size. Maybe slightly bigger Liberty Lunch, maybe. But killer venue, man.
That's great.
I saw
man.
so many great bands.
I
there.
bet. Yeah, that's awesome.
But so Deafheaven.
Yeah. So anyway, black metal and shoegaze. What do you think? So.
Yeah, that was the other thing I noticed was that there would seem to be like a My Bloody Valentine. It's like metal guys who listened to My Bloody Valentine a few times.
So I had never listened to Loveless, My Bloody Valentine's kind of seminal album.
Yeah.
And so I put it on the other day just to kind of see how it matched up. And I feel like the way that the vocals are recorded on that album, on Loveless, are kind of similar to the way they're recorded. They're almost like it's like another instrument. They're not really high up in the mix. It sounds kind of not quirky, but it's just different. Like it's almost like kind of like a not a political statement, but like a fuck you to modern recording techniques. Like, we're going to drown out the vocals a little bit.
Yeah, Superchunk does kind of
they do that too. Yeah, totally. So that's the first similarity.
In fact, you guys will be, there are lyrics to our theme song. And I recorded it that way as a total tribute to Superchunk. Yeah.
Oh, no way.
That song is called Ambition and Fear.
It's a great song.
Oh, thanks, man.
I love it. Well, I guess
you don't know the lyrics, so
I haven't even heard the whole song, but when you played it for me, I was like, this is awesome. This is perfect for like what we're doing too. But
the lyrics actually kind of fit in a way too.
Sure.
I'll play it for you sometime. But it occurred to me as you were describing that. I'm like, oh, I even did that on a song. And it's our theme song.
Yeah. It's wild,
now
man.
the lyrics are so low, you can't even hear them.
Yeah. But yeah, I really saw some similarities between that album and this album, and I get it. I think I got it a little more after listening to that album for some reason. I don't know. I'm not quite sure why.
It was interesting reading those reviews because I was just trying to get a pulse on, how people felt about the album. I don't want to like cough up things other people said, but you want to say like, okay, am I hearing this right? Is there something I'm missing? Like I'm not an expert on black metal. But there were some reviews that were like, "Oh, they're doing that shoegaze metal thing that's been going on for a few years," and I was like, "Really?
I don't
know about that."
Yeah, maybe there is a couple other bands there. Well, there's a band called Godflesh, and I think the lead singer of Godflesh, after they broke up, got into like a shoegaze band, and I think some of that stuff was kind of shoegaze inspired, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think there may be some metal references to shoegaze in a way.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird. I don't know if that really makes all that much sense, but whatever.
I mean, it works on this record. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So, what are some other highlights from it for you? I think we got to talk about, Please Remember, which is a pretty unique track. What do you think about? What do you think in general? Because I maybe have some criticism of this.
Okay.
But I want to get your thoughts on it first. So the dynamics on this album. So, they go hard.
They're
One of
very
the
up
other
and
first
down,
things that I
yeah.
said was that it almost sounds like an album, like the most dramatic parts of any other band's catalog.
Yeah,
all
for sure.
together in one album. But actually, the more I listen to it, the more I realize there are some more reflective, slower, reflective parts.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that? What do you think about that choice?
I like it, honestly. I feel like it plays almost like thematic, theatrical. Listening to the album as one kind of continuous piece, I think is a really great way to experience it. And I won't say that I didn't listen to individual tracks, because absolutely I did. But I think this album was maybe meant to be listened to front to back.
I agree.
Absolutely.
And I think that I was thinking about it. I think the reflective parts are both the strength and weakness of the album. And let me explain this, because I do think that what I find most compelling is the heavy black metal, primal screaming.
Really?
Stuff.
That's surprising to me.
No, because I believe him. You know what I mean? Like, even though you can't work out you have to go read the lyrics, later and go like, oh, that's what he's shouting about? You can't, and that can sort of sound one-dimensional if you're not really paying attention, I think.
Right.
But what I look for in music usually, I may have said this to you before, I'm looking for something that tells me something human. What is something about the human experience that I have maybe felt before, or that I don't know, that I need to learn, or that I can relate to? That's not the only function of music, but I think most of the time that's what I'm looking for in music. And I think it's very easy to fake rage or fake something sinister or a reaction against the world. You know what I mean? And I don't feel that they're faking it here. Like, I believe his voice, and I love that. I think the reflective sections, I think you're right. I love them conceptually, because I think, to begin with, no one's raged 100% of the time. That would just be tiring, right?
Exactly.
Even just as to listen to it, it would be tiring. So I think it needs those sections. And I think that lyrically and conceptually, there is clearly a lot of reflection going into the lyrics. So musically, when it kind of comes down, I feel like it's appropriate, like maybe, like, you can't just stay, and not that he's angry at that sunbather, right? Like, that's probably, it's more complicated than that. But when he's singing about it, there's a primal rage about it, right?
Absolutely.
But he knows that it's more than just that. It's more, it's not her, she's not the reason his life is a misery.
Exactly,
you know what I mean? Like, and he knows it.
Yeah.
And so to go in and to sort of say, I saw this thing, it made me reflect on myself, and it made me feel like I'm ugly, like I'm awful, like I could have made decisions to be like her, and I made different decisions for reasons that I thought were right at the time. And now I find myself, it's kind of a temptation, right? A temptation, not just a sexual temptation. That's the least interesting part of it. But like a philosophical temptation. Like, I'm not, why am I going and sleeping on a freaking concrete mat or concrete somewhere when I could be, I could have
laying out in the sun in this rich neighborhood.
Go get my Vampire Weekend polo shirts on and cut my hair and go be that guy. You know what I mean? And I think that, so there's a moment where he understands the complexity of that. And I think coming down and being reflective is great. I think I want the musical parts to be more compelling when it's reflective. There's some piano parts that I feel are kind of noodly, and even some guitar parts that I feel like I wish they were a little bit more complex. I went and listened to Master of Puppets.
Did you really?
Yeah. I was like, well, that's one of my favorite metal albums.
Yeah,
it's not a black metal album. It's a kind of weird point of comparison. But I was thinking about like the beginning of Battery and how it starts with like sort of more mellow parts. And metal guys have been doing that forever, where they kind of do some, because you've got to have some dynamics for the heavy parts to make sense, right? You've got to have a foil, a contrast. And I was just impressed listening to that track. I was like, oh yeah, the guitar intricacy here is really interesting. I was listening to Fascination Street by The Cure, which is another track that kind of, and not that Sunbather should sound like the blasted Cure. I'm not saying that at all. But like the beginning of that has this sort of, it's like a long intro that has some complexity to it that really appealed to me. And I kind of felt like I wish Sunbather had like 50% more of that. Like it's so guitar based or piano based that I just felt like there was some. musical complexity that I'm looking for that I didn't quite hear that I think would make it stronger.
See, I kind of disagree with you. Because I think the kind of more mellow parts, the parts that there's much more instrumentation, and the parts that kind of bloom, I think very much reinforce the ideas that the singer is conveying when the lyrics are screamed or whatever. It's almost like the John Coltrane, Johnny Hartman album where, Johnny is kind of, like you said in the episode, they're kind of like he's evoking the ideas that Coltrane is trying to, and I feel like there's a lot of, as strange as it sounds, there's a lot of similarities between those two albums where, Johnny Hartman is kind of helping Coltrane along and vice versa. And I just pulled some lyrics up here, and please remember the song you were talking about. Let's hear maybe a moment or two of that. Sure. If that's cool. Let's see.
I do think this one's more effective. Like I'm not, what I'm saying is not so much about this because this has that crazy, almost psychedelic background.
Yeah, that's
stuff.
right. Yeah.
And this quote from from the lightness of being or whatever This I think is effective. Let me say, like, this isn't really what I'm talking about as far as something. No, it's good. I think. I kind of disagree with what's being said in the lyrics. It's a passage from the unbearable lightness of being.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Maybe. So it's I disagree with it philosophically, but it doesn't matter, because it's about kind of the lines basically describe a situation where someone starts to feel that the love of their life was a matter of simple chance, rather than about something eternal and beautiful, and kind of he realized the foundations of his love was kind of just they happened to meet each other instead of her meeting someone else, right? I think that tends to prioritize things that didn't happen over things that did, and that's why I kind of disagree with it. But I see the power of that point of view, right? And I see how that probably affected the guys in Deafheaven, and would it could help drive the emotional things that they're getting at in the lyrics. So I think that's actually an incredibly effective passage.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Well, that might have been a bad example. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm thinking the problem with this is it's like, I've got to find that part at 7 minutes in on Dreamhouse or something. You know what I mean? Like I could maybe find it for you, but there's a piano section. There's some guitar arpeggiated sections.
Okay.
And stuff.
I know what you're talking about.
There's a couple things like that that just seem kind of noodly to me, and I would like to hear those explored a little bit more, and maybe now I'm sounding like a musical snob, and I really don't mean to be that way, because I'm not saying that they're invalid ideas. They're just things I've heard before, and I kind of felt like, maybe there was this album is so daring in some ways. I would like to hear something to match the ambition from a musical standpoint in those sections.
That's interesting. Yeah,
but that's not to say I don't like it. I think it's to be honest, I almost felt like listening to this. I went and listened to the first album of theirs, and I really liked it.
Yeah, really,
a lot. Yeah. And I don't know where they went. They've got another one after it that I haven't heard yet.
Two albums. More. Yeah, they came out with one this year, and they had an album before that too. The most recent one's pretty good.
I almost felt like this. I definitely hear the potential in this band. I'd like to hear the other records too, to hear where they went, because I think there may be a potential for even greater stuff after it. But that's not a slam on this. It's just more that I'm overselling this because I actually really liked this album. It's just there are parts that don't work for me as strongly as others. And like I said, I was surprised that it's really the black metal parts that I'm like, and especially once I grab the lyric sheet and figure out what he's singing about, and I think it's actually a very these guys are really good at talking about poetic situations, like the pecan tree at the end, where he's talking about, essentially being like his father. And I think he basically describes, and I may have this wrong. This is just my perception of what he's singing about here. But he basically is like, I'm drunk on a concrete floor the day you were born. So it's almost like he's got his own child, or he's singing about, maybe to a future child. I don't know if it's his actual child, and he says that I'm kind of like my dad, and essentially I've become this thing that I thought I would resist. You know? And that's come on, I come from 90s rock. That's like the theme of 90s rock.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I want to be like you, Dad, like a kind of thing. But I mean, I think it was even the image of a pecan tree, a pecan that falls and becomes its own tree, but it's still a pecan tree. Like that's a really cool image, It's
very
and once I sort of grab on that's what they're getting at, like all those screams and stuff makes so much sense to me. I don't know. I mean, maybe my inner metalhead's waking up and I just want to listen to metal all the time.
And it's like I said before, it kind of goes back to what I said before is like this is much more poetic and not as image driven as a lot of other metal, I guess,
Right.
They're not singing about like Dungeons and Dragons or, killing or anything like that.
That's the stuff that's always been hard to like. I mean, I can get into it in kind of an ironic, fun way, what I mean? Yeah. Like a Frazetta painting put to music or something. like I'm cool with that. You want to sing about killing a basilisk with your hands? Okay,
cool.
Man.
Yeah.
That's cool for, an hour, but then I'm going to go back and, I'm looking for other themes. But I think like these themes speak to me.
Exactly. They're relatable. Yeah. Like the last 3 lines of the Pecan Tree are, I am no one, I cannot love, it's in my blood. And that's very dark and kind of brooding, but it's kind of like you said, like, I believe it.
I believe he means it. And if I can believe he means it, whether or not I believe it's actually true, I believe he means it. And that means I'm hearing something that's human.
Right.
I'm going to say authentic, but I don't mean authentic in the sort of Mumford & Sons way we were making fun of earlier. Like it feels honest. Maybe that's a better word to say it. And if it feels honest, then I'm going to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I think that's true across the album. In fact, there's a brutal bit of honesty when you hear there's a drug deal goes down in the middle of the album.
Yeah.
What did you think of that, man?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that a lot of these guys have kind of battled with addiction and, and it's kind of like, it's something that I think they kind of wanted to open up about. And I think they may have taken a chance with, on this, on the album. So let's see. I don't know.
Which track is that?
That's a good
I know
question.
when I heard it come on, I mean, I hope I don't break anybody's illusion of my wild and crazy life, but I don't really hear drug deals very often.
Yeah.
But as I'm listening to it, I could tell that's kind of what it was. And then it's intercut with a crazed preacher kind of talking about hell or something, which is kind of a schlocky idea to do that. But I think it's super effective here, the way they juxtapose those things, because clearly they're talking. And then I think that's also in juxtaposition to the Sunbather, right? Like this is them crawling through hell here.
Right.
Like this is the hell they have to crawl through.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And I think that's I think their execution elevates it.
Agreed. And I was, and again, I'm sorry to harp on watching YouTube stuff, but another interview that I was watching with George, he kind of talked about being poor and how that shaped a lot of experiences that made this album. And he talked about it in a way that was almost like introspective. And like a lot of musicians of this ilk talk about being broke and like, it sucks that I'm in a band and I can't make a living and it's bullshit. But they kind of didn't really... they weren't really kind of posturing that way. They were like, this is, we were really poor and this is the conditions, and the conditions that we were living in really helped inspire and inform this album. And that art, even though it was bad, like this, some kind of beautiful art came out of that. And this is what came out of that based on our experience. So, it's really, really, really interesting, man. And it's almost like, when Henry Rollins would get in the van talking about like eating dog food because he was so poor and like, roll it up in bread and just like not even chew it so you didn't taste it kind of thing. And like, I feel like there's a little bit of that in this, how, just this like life as a touring musician is tough and you're poor and you're not playing to a lot of people, but it leads you to create more art. And it's like, you're suffering for your art, but at the end of the day, something beautiful could come out of that. So,
right. Yeah. But I think that suffering is, but I think it's also about the temptation to stop that suffring.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I
mean, obviously,
Sunbather, I think, is very much, a reflexive introspection about maybe if I would have, like you said, maybe if I would have made better choices, I could have I could have been,
But I don't even know if it's better choices. If I had made just different choices.
Different choices, yeah.
And then he sort of, at the end, he repeats always and forever or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of a reaffirmation that he made the right choice, and so he sort of avoids the temptation of essentially buckling and becoming something else, I think, Let me go into something real quick that we kind of alluded to earlier. So,
sure.
Sunbather, you picked this album, and I'm like, okay. And I listened to it again, and I'm like, okay, wow, heavy hitting, right?
Yeah.
So, but I got 2 kids and everything. Like finding time to listen to Sunbather and has been hard.
I bet.
Like driving to work and stuff is great, but it's like I can't be like, "Hey Siri, play Sunbather," and then it's like, oh, even though the lyrics are mostly unintelligible, it's like I was playing it and Steph was like, "I'm not in the mood to listen to this right now." You know what I mean? Like
it's challenging music for sure.
It is very challenging.
You can't just put it on
heavy hitting.
Yeah, like it's not something you can just put on a car ride out to wherever.
It's like, oh, I gotta sweep the floor. Let me get that Sunbather out.
Yeah.
Oh,
while you
sing
work.
some more about the pecan tree, like or Vertigo or whatever.
I am no one. I am, whatever. Oh, okay.
Ooh, I'd like to put on some Rihanna now.
Well, let me get the Swiffer out.
Yeah, it's not really music to Swift to. Yeah. That'll be their next. You said they got 4 records. Deafheaven, record 5, music to Swift.
Music to Swift too.
Yeah, come on. It could be a collaborate with Taylor Swift.
Oh God.
Anyway, so it has been a bit of a challenge. You said that Courtney was telling you, that you were getting obsessed with that Vampire Weekend. She was definitely like just not tolerating listening to
Well, and
Deafheaven.
she likes it too. She's like, I like it just fine. Like I like Vampire Weekend, but like calm down, Marty. I'm like, I'm doing a podcast on it. Like, what do you want me to do, man?
Yeah, I
like,
gotta
come
listen
on.
to it.
So yeah, man. What else do we have to say about Sunbather? Anything or?
I definitely think it was a revelation for me, And like I said, I don't want it to sound like I overstated the parts that I thought were weaker than others because I don't want to sound like I'm saying I would definitely recommend this record. But I am curious to hear what the other record, because I heard their first record and this one. I haven't heard the later ones. I want to see if they develop those ideas at all musically and where that goes, because I could really sense that this could be the beginning of something like a really great band, not like their ultimate expression of what they're capable of. So I'm curious to see whether that bears out.
So when you were talking about Windows, the song that has like the drug deal.
Right.
So apparently around the time this was recording, the guitar player was addicted to opiates, and they wanted to record one of his drug deals because it was, I guess, something very personal to a band member. And then, the second recording is a live preacher in downtown San Francisco, and it's supposed to be kind of this juxtaposition. It says thematically, and I'm just kind of reading this from Wikipedia, but it makes a lot of sense. Thematically, it's supposed to be about this guy talking about the evils of hell intermixed with one's own personal hell.
Right.
And the actual realities like addiction and self-worth, not the fire and brimstone. So I think that we can even relate that back to Vampire Weekend, So I feel like maybe there's some similar themes on both of these albums that, we kind of just by chance had got to explore with this episode, which is really interesting. I do feel
like both of them, and even going back to my pick for the song of the year, Royals, like all 3 of those to me are about kind of criticizing where the world is to some degree.
Yeah.
Now to varying degrees, or explaining a personal disconnect from the rest of it.
Right,
and I think that's kind of an interesting theme to have developed in 2013.
For sure, yeah. And I do like the fact that they are very much like, what's the word I'm looking for here? They were very they wore it all on their sleeve. They weren't scared to kind of put all these very personal things on this album, just to see where it went. And I really think that's interesting. I like it when bands do that. I like it when they kind of stick their necks out and they're kind of like, this is who we are. This warts and all, as I like to say that, warts and all. I like to say that phrase a lot. Like, warts and all, this is who we are. And, for better or worse, this is what compelled us to make the art we make. And a lot of people don't understand that. Like, a lot of people don't get like, drug use and, these weird, like, kind of dark themes. Like, why would you want, because it's art, because it's different. Like, I had a girlfriend once that was surprised that I liked Charles Bukowski, the writer,
right?
Because I was happy. She was like, "You're too happy to like Bukowski." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Like, it's literature. It's like it's enjoyable because it's literature and it's important. It has nothing to do with how happy or sad I am. Right. Just because I'm happy all the time doesn't mean I haven't felt like Bukowski felt.
Or can't understand that. I've never done a drug deal or whatever, or felt what it must feel like to
be addicted to opiates.
Exactly, to be compelled to do something that you don't really want to do, but you do it because you have to or whatever, But I get the sense of that. I mean, the music, like I said, the execution of that is so good.
Yeah.
I guess it's Windows, is that the name of the track?
Windows is the name of the song.
Yeah, like the execution of that is great. Do you want to play a little bit of it? Did we have a chance to do that?
I don't think we did. No, let's check it out.
But it makes someone like me who doesn't really know the experience directly to feel like I can understand that the feeling he must be going through.
For sure.
You got them with you? Okay.
I mean, if someone was to dismiss this, it's a druggy thing or whatever, it's like you're really missing the. I mean, you're ignoring the musical idea here.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I got enough for 3. That's it. I'm not catching anything.
But what I like too is
like
that
a crashing piano kind of. Yeah.
It's a backwards piano too. Like you can hear that almost like a psychedelic thing.
Yeah.
Or whatever, but it's incredibly sinister.
Yeah,
and again,
sinister,
this is another one that I think really works. As far as where they're like, it's not just doesn't just work conceptually. I think it works musically too.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, there comes that preacher. That's the part that I kind of says a little schlocky. Like people have done that before.
Yeah,
you put a crazy preacher and suddenly it's dark. But I think it works here because the execution works because they've already put it out there with the.
Exactly.
If it was just if you took out the drug deal part and just played the preacher, it would be silly.
It would be dumb. Yeah.
It would. But I think it works because you already know that he's crawling
going
through hell.
for a higher concept here, and they're using the preacher to reinforce that idea.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
Crazy stuff, man.
Showcasing the true horrors that are here on Earth, one's own personal addiction.
Yeah.
That is the truth. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for introducing me to that record, man. I really was glad to go back and listen. And something a bit more of a challenge. Like I said, I'm always more of a like a punk guy than a metal guy. So any chance, although this is a very hard-edged kind of, there's some punk elements to this too. So it wasn't totally outside my wheelhouse. But,
Agree. Yeah, man, that was really, really interesting. I knew this was going to be an interesting album to talk about, just because of how all over the place it is and how different it is. So I'm glad I realized when it came out and we were able to kind of make it happen. So
yeah, I'm glad too. I definitely think this is the most challenging record we've talked about yet.
Yeah.
Like even more than the Coltrane album.
I think both of these albums were very challenging to talk about, for sure. Like, just with some of the they both had a much higher concept, I thought, than any other albums we had talked about on either of the other episodes. I mean, I can talk for 3 days straight about A Tribe Called Quest, but so Deafheaven, Sunbather, and and the Vampire Weekend album, it's a lot of stuff that you kind of have to wrestle with,
Yeah.
Be introspective about, and you have to kind of let the art kind of move you and that kind of thing. So
yeah, and I mean, I think both of those are really communicating like coherent ideas to you.
Absolutely.
It's not just musical ideas or
not
like
just
a collection
things
of
that are abstract or anything like that.
Yeah, they're both sort of going for big things. And one thing I like about both of them is that neither of them sound self-conscious about it.
No.
You know what I mean? It's not like, I mean, I definitely think the Vampire Weekend album sounds very studied. Like, they're being written by guys who got degrees from Columbia.
Like they all read The Great Gatsby and stuff.
Exactly.
And,
but it doesn't feel like it's an act, like they're putting on a mask. You know what I mean? It's sort of, it's coming from a place that is, these are the things they're experiencing and thinking about. And I think that's definitely true with the Deafheaven album. Like,
they're not just regurgitating stuff, that kind of stuff into music.
I think both of these albums, while on different ends of the spectrum, because I definitely think Vampire Weekend is super like studied and literate and whatever. And Deafheaven is more raw, but both of them are coming from like a specific perspective. And I think that's why they're 100% artistically valid.
Absolutely. And wrestles with some of the same things. I mean, and even on the Deafheaven album, there is kind of a thing about growing old. Not Vertigo, on the Pecan Tree.
Yeah.
I think that song has a lot of, regret about getting older and not understanding things, and in a different context, much different context, but still just, has a lot of the same concerns. It brings a lot of the same, kind of nervousness, anxieties to the table, I guess,
I think so too.
Yeah, for sure. I am no one I cannot love. It's in my blood. Like,
wow.
Yeah, that's intense. It's the second time I've read those lyrics, but it's not any less intense than it was the first time. That's for sure. So
beautiful.
So yeah,
well,
man.
I enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, me too.
2013. What an interesting year.
Interesting year.
We've gone kind of chronologically so far, so we're gonna have to decide where we go next.
Yeah,
but it'll be fun to pick
that up.
I think
the 80s might be something good to explore.
You think the 80s are calling?
Well, 88 is one of the years that made hip hop, but we might need to shelf that for now.
Yeah, I think that's too close to 1990. We should find something.
We'll probably
Who knows though? Maybe we could just pick something.
We'll see.
We'll figure it out.
We'll see. I mean, and almost, well, yeah.
And we're going to play with the format a little bit too,
exactly.
I think. So we might have a chance to play with the format next time. We'll see. But it's been a lot of fun, guys.
Yeah.
Do you want to shout out our Twitter and everything? Oh, I should tell a quick story about Twitter.
Yeah.
So I'm on Twitter now.
Funny.
So I'm on Twitter now. So I never got on Twitter before. I thought that Twitter was like a transitory thing. It's going to come and go. Here it is, like freaking 12 years later or whatever, and it's like here it's still going on. So once we started talking about Twitter, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and get on Twitter, and I got on there. And of course, I don't have any. I'm sure I've got lots of friends on Twitter, but I don't know them. I don't know how to find them. I'm still figuring it out, and so I just searched Lou Christie. We've been making fun of Lou Christie like crazy.
We have, big time.
Unfortunately. So I just searched him as a joke, and I found like him or his management or something on there. And so I followed him. So I'm following a grand total of 3 people, our podcast, Marty, and Lou Christie. And then the thing was I came back like 8 hours later. Lou Christie followed me back.
Yeah.
So now,
well, and Chris told me, and I was out and about running errands and stuff, and he was like, "Dude, I got Lou Christie's following me on Twitter," and I looked at the Lou Christie page, and I thought it was just some guy named Lou Christie because there were these like kind of Asian characters next to his name, and I was like, I don't know if Chris knows who this is. But then I looked at it more carefully, and I was like, oh, this is really the Lou Christie, the musician, because the pinned tweet at the top of all of the tweets was "Two faces have I." And it basically says in the bio, like, the tweets are done by his longtime manager, not the actual Lou Christie. But
it kind of so what this is telling people, please follow me on Twitter, because I don't know, like, it just makes me kind of sad to think that that there is now a less than 0% chance, maybe not much, but slightly less than 0% chance that I said something that could make Lou Christie sad.
Yeah,
like he might
or mad
hear it, or mad, or call.
How old is he, you think?
Oh my God, he's got to be old, like in his 70s. Would you guess?
Oh, let's. I gotta know.
We gotta find out how old Lou Christie is. But my Twitter handle is Christastrophe.
Christastrophe.
Yeah, with 3 E's, which is even more of a Christastrophe.
E's, I think.
Yeah, and 1 E as well. So literally, I had to be the 3E Christastrophe, which is more of a catastrophe. So it's it sort of works.
Yeah. I am just at Marty Kawa, all one word, if anybody wants to get out there. He's 75 years old. He was born in 1943.
Yeah, so he's still out there. Shout out to Lou Christie. We love you, Lou.
All right, we don't have to talk about Lou Christie anymore. I'm sorry. We'll stop right now. But yeah, so we obviously are still active on social media at AOTY Podcast, and Twitter, same handle. We are up pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts. We are up. We are on Google Play Store for Android. We are on Stitcher. We are on TuneIn Radio. We are on iTunes. Or Apple Podcasts, I guess. The only place we're really not on yet is Spotify. So I think we'll hopefully be able to make that happen. Spotify is kind of weird with how they do podcasts. And since we have the podcast page the playlist, the actual interactive page, how that's all going to shake out might be a little weird. But whatever kind of phone you have, Android, Apple, we are covered. You can listen to the podcast on whatever format you like. So
That's fantastic. And don't sleep on those playlists. We put a lot of energy into them.
A lot of good stuff, man.
And also, I said this before, but I mean it. Let us know via one of these social media platforms what you think, what your favorite albums are of 2013, what we got wrong. Did I misunderstand Deafheaven altogether? Is there, anything that you want to say to us? Say it to us, because we're interested to hear your feedback. I think I'm enough of a music nerd that I would do this just and throw it in the fireplace when we're done. You know what I mean? Like, just having these conversations with you, Marty, is worth it to me.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
It is fun to me to think of it being extended when other people feedback. In fact, we've already released the first episode now. It's gone out. The second episode is coming out in a couple of days from the time that we're recording this. Already got some pretty cool feedback from friends and stuff, and people who have listened to it. So I'm hoping you guys are still finding stuff you like. And if you've got any suggestions or hate mail or whatever, or just something you want us to read out on the air, I'd be happy to do that too. On the air, like it's a radio show. Through the bits. If you want to read out through the
bits.
Through the bits, we'll read it to you.
Speaking of replies, my cousin Steven, he, after listening to the first episode, he had this to say. What do Rakim, Sam Cooke, Sleater Kinney, the Bangles, Clint Eastwood, and the Ronettes all have in common? Answer at AOTY Podcast. And he left a Fred Savage, Kevin Arnold gif of him he has a big cloud or a big crowd behind him clapping, and he's like slowly bringing up a thumbs up, and it's pretty good. So thank you, Steven, for listening. Everyone that's listened, thank you guys for listening. And like Kris said, absolutely tell us what you think. We'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to talk more about music, because that is what we do.
Especially if you think the podcast is too short. Tell us if you think it's too short, because we can oblige making it longer.
That's true. That's very true.
I have heard some guys saying that they think it's a bit long. I think, what can you do about it? I mean, I think at the end of the day, I love the conversation, so I don't really want to cut it down. But I do think there are some opportunities to play with the format a bit. And maybe we'll do that soon.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So be on the lookout for something maybe a little different. We have an idea that we are going to test, and hopefully you guys will get to hear that soon. So,
all right.
With that being said, thanks a lot, guys, for listening, and we will see you next time.
Take care.